We can have a respectable life, like two human beings. Natural, Holly. What do you think this thing is about women's liberation? To teach us to be free.
They're going to think we're lesbians.
No, they're not going to think we're lesbians, Holly. A school teacher and a model. Those are lesbians. You read too many comic books, Holly. You're living in a dream world. Just because you're a high fashion model, that you have to be seen around town with these guys, carrying plants, hitching rides, because it's glamorous.
I love
you. Do you know what they're saying? That you're a tramp. Low life.
Shit.
Scum.
So what? I am.
Time for another episode of the Bloodbath 2 podcast. I am Tom Selleck.
And I'm Dwight D. Eisenhower.
How are you doing today, Dwight?
Feeling a little dead. How about yourself?
A little dead? I'm feeling a little mustachy.
You feeling a little like you steal water from fire hydrants and bring it to your ranch? Because that actually happened.
What?
There's a lawsuit against Tom Selleck because he has been filling up a truck with water at local fire hydrants and bringing it to his avocado ranch. He's stealing public water.
The man has an avocado ranch?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, not
But
at
yeah,
all.
there's a
Good for
lawsuit.
him.
There's a lawsuit that names him and his wife, and the truck apparently has done this like 6 times since March. And because ag in particular has been asked to make anywhere from 25% to 35% cuts in water usage. And so his solution is, fuck you, I'm Tom Selleck, I'm stealing water from municipal utility districts.
That is amazing. I love it.
So random. I read it today on the way to work, and I was like, what?
So maybe I'm not Tom Selleck. I'm Magnum P.I., okay? So today I'm Magnum P.I., I'm not Tom Selleck.
And I'm MacGyver.
All right, so first thing let's talk about is you fans. If you want to support this podcast, I'm going to tell you the easiest way to do it right off the bat. What you can do is you can go to iTunes and you can subscribe. Then if you like our show, you can give us a good rating, give us a good review. That is the easiest way for us to get new listeners. So we would very much appreciate it if you did that for us. If you want to communicate with us, either critically or friendly or questions or whatever, you can contact us via email right now. It's the best way. That is bloodbath2, the numeral 2, podcast@gmail.com.
That's bloodbath2podcast@gmail.com.
Okay, so originally this week, we were going to have first of our crisis podcasts, but recent events in comic books last week have made me think we need to talk about certain issues that have come up.
We're having a different crisis.
I was wondering, do you want to jump right into that, or would you rather get a couple news items out of the way to warm up, talk about things first?
Are these okay, so your idea of news items is usually a list of shit that will piss me off.
These are not.
Okay.
These are not.
Let's do news first, and then we can kind of warm up, because I have a lot to say, so...
Gotcha. Okay, so the first bit of awesome news is, and you're already aware of this, our favorite comic book writer, Grant Morrison, has been named the editor-in-chief for Heavy Metal magazine.
For those of you who don't know what heavy metal is...
Heavy metal, originally metal.
God, that was horrible.
How would you say it then?
Metal Huron.
Okay, there you go. My co-host here actually speaks French.
Fuck you.
I'd be surprised if a lot of people didn't know what heavy metal was, but for those of you who might not know, because I'm trying to keep in mind that there are people who are going to tune in who aren't as familiar with certain things. I don't want to be an elitist podcast in that way.
There's plenty of stuff that I don't know about, too, so...
So I want to be friendly to new readers. So Heavy Metal was a comic book magazine anthology series that was primarily originally published in France, in Europe, and was then published by the National Lampoon Group here in the United States, and was basically known for fantasy, sci-fi, horror stories. It was an alternative to a lot of what comic books were, not only in subject and tone, but honestly in level of craft. Heavy Metal gets unfairly looked at as being a book basically that teenagers looked at for big titties.
Because there are a lot of big titties in it. But
there's some truth to. There's absolutely some truth to that. That a lot of these guys were drawing stuff there that they couldn't get away with in other areas.
And I'm not complaining because I love big titties.
But it was also a place where the likes of Richard Corbin published his work.
Mobius,
Dan O'Bannon. A lot of these guys were doing great work for this magazine, and they published science fiction short stories. There's a lot of great stuff. Personally, for me, heavy metal, along with Epic, which was a kind of heavy metal knockoff, published by Marvel Comics, actually, was kind of a taboo thing in my dad's store. I would grab them and secretly read them in the back because they were naughty and dirty. And then there was a movie. Animated movie that I have a lot of nostalgia for, but
it's not necessarily a really good movie.
It's not necessarily a really good movie, and the reason for that is that they took a lot of the source material and changed it quite a bit. So So Beautiful, So Deadly is a story from heavy metal in the day, and in the original story, these aliens abduct a whole bunch of people from Earth. I think even Woody Allen is one of the people they abduct.
That's weird.
But in the movie version, it's just the one hot chick.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
But our favorite writer, Mr. Grant Morrison, is going to be editor-in-chief.
To me, that signals that they're looking for a resurgence of weird and kind of avant-garde stuff. It's definitely an editorial direction, and it makes a statement when you appoint someone like that to that kind of position.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought this was actually surprising.
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere.
I would have really thought he would have gotten the 2000 AD editorialship. Not that that's up for grabs, but that would seem more likely because it's British, obviously.
But the British, ever since William of Orange, they just hate those French.
Wow. You're going to tie this to that.
The French and the English have hated each other for centuries. Centuries. They played ping pong with armadas and just as much shit as Spain did with France and France did with Germany. Really, France just hates everyone.
Listen, you fucking history nerd.
I'm just saying.
We're talking about something important. We're talking about heavy metal and Grant Morrison, okay?
Really?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I thought this was an open forum for ideas.
Okay, sure.
I see how it is.
In typical Grant Morrison fashion, he has proclaimed that this is going to be his life from now on.
Oh, no.
And that he is basically approaching it totally ritualistically, and he was talking about how he is going to dress the part, be the part, think the part. This was going to... the aesthetic of heavy metal is going to take over his life. Now, that is fucking phenomenal.
I love him.
Because what that basically means is he is going to be living a life of basically decadent, punk rock, psychedelic weirdness.
Space opera weirdness. Yeah.
There's, in the very first heavy metal, I can't remember who did it. It might be Mike Plug. There's a short little comedic sci-fi story about a guy in a spaceship, and it gets attacked by a giant space monster that tries to mate with the ship and ejaculates into the ship, and the sperm are little aliens he has to fight.
That's so weird. I love that. Because why? But that's something that would happen in space. 9 times out of 10.
Would it?
No, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to fucking run into, intelligent life. You're not going to run into, for example, Ray Wise as a proto-Vulcan on some fucking planet and referencing Star Trek The Next Generation and fucking, don't violate the Prime Directive and, give them fire and all of this shit. You're going to run into a big fucking space blob that wants to mate with your ship.
Or xenomorphs.
Oh, God. Those two things seem more likely to me, honestly.
I tend to agree. Yeah, and that...
Space bugs.
That is actually a tangent into our next story, if you want to move on.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm excited that... Not to say that heavy metal ever did not become relevant or dropped out of style, quote unquote, but
It did, though.
But I'm happy to see that they have a resurgence. A lot of things are having a resurgence, like Archie comics.
Like Archie, yeah.
Yeah. So it's really cool to see, things are gone but not forgotten, and they can always come back.
Well, I think there's probably some people in various camps, like the Archie camp and the heavy metal camp, that realizes now is the time that you can capitalize with the way pop culture is going. You know, no one would have given a shit about heavy metal 10 years ago, and nobody did.
Yeah.
So this is a time.
Yeah, new audiences, new technology, new readership, new ways to reach people. It's a good time to go full tilt, I think.
And Grant has also said that he's already started reaching out to his comic writer friendies to get them on board and to do content for it.
Peter Milligan.
Yeah.
Warren Ellis.
I can't wait. I mean, I want to see what the submission guidelines are going to be, because I will absolutely start writing, try to get into heavy metal.
I'll fucking submit something. Who cares?
Yeah, if you don't know, both me and Eisenhower here are frustrated writers. So
I do have things published. They're small.
Fuck you.
Hey, you got to do the grind, man, to get it
done. I started working on a new comic strip. I'll tell you about it. I'm not going to talk about it on the podcast because people will rip me off.
That's cool. Nope, you got to work on your stuff, submit it, get rejected, submit it again, cry, drink some stuff, redo your drafts, submit them again, smoke some weed, take a nap, and then eventually you'll get published.
Hemingway said it, right? It's the easiest job in the world. You just wake up and bleed on the page, right?
You wake up every morning and bleed on the page. He also said, write drunk, edit sober.
Okay, this is a complete tangent, but this is something that really infuriates me about, like, people who, I'm a creative, I want to, I'm a writer, these people.
I'm a writer.
These people have a pretension over, like, being creative because it gives them some kind of public persona, this person to be. The truth is, fucking writing, especially, is.
You want to talk about conceptual poets again? Because we can
terrible.
Do that.
It is terrible.
It's horrible.
Because what you have to, what you're doing when you are a writer, and basically, like any type of real creative person, is you're sitting there in front of the abyss. You're standing there in front of this black hole, which is the blank fucking screen, and everything horrible you think about yourself in the world basically bubbles to the top to try to stop you to be creative. It is not fucking fun. So anybody who's like, I just couldn't live without being creative, fuck you.
Bite me.
You bite me.
What's your fucking secret?
I have, like, fucking PTSD from staring at blank fucking pages that are just going, you better give me a fucking idea.
Okay, is your computer Henry Rollins?
I think it is. My muse is Henry Rollins.
So, you don't have Conan the Barbarian standing over you. You have Henry Rollins standing over you.
No, and if people don't know that story...
That's a great story.
Robert E. Howard, who created Conan, basically
said
that what happened is he had this archetypal encounter with this character who would stand behind him with an axe every night while he wrote his stories.
That's certainly a way to get shit done.
He said he never saw him, like, full on. It was always, like, out of the corner of his eye, and he felt the presence, and it just made him write all night long.
Yeah, so anyone who's like, oh, this is so much fun, I'm gonna go skip rocks in my fucking yard and wear skirts and drink some fucking period tea and shit, like, kiss my ass. It is either, like, you want to talk about pouring yourself into the abyss.
It's tears and blood.
Into the abyss. And we're not saying that what comes out is good. 90% of what comes out is fucking garbage. And then you have to sift through the garbage and, like, let the garbage sit for a while and decompose, and maybe you get a couple fucking sentences out of it. I've gone through my manuscript draft from grad school multiple times now, and I'm like, well, that word choice didn't suck in this, like, 15 pages I just read, or, oh, I can use that line for something.
Most people have this pretension about talent, and
fuck you if you're talented, you assholes. I said
it before in, like, the first podcast.
I'm very jealous of you.
I don't even relate to people with talent. That's
But they also have to work, and a lot of people who are talented have put in the fucking work.
Absolutely, I agree with that. What I was going to say, though, about that is that a lot of us think we're going to be Stephen King, but most of us end up as Dean Koontz.
Oh, poor Dean Koontz. Hey, and you know what? People should really stop making fun of him, because how many books has he published, and how many books have we published?
Exactly. I mean, there's something to be said for that. And honestly, he has written at least 2 books I really liked, so there you go.
2?
Yeah, 2.
What are the 2?
I mean, I haven't read everything he's done, but there are 2 books I really like that he did.
Name them.
Twilight Eyes.
Yeah, that's good.
And Watchers.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Peter Straub is only, well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say 0.
By himself? 0.
Well, yeah, I mean, he wrote, What the Fuck with Stephen King. Black House. Is that what it was?
You're the King expert. You tell me.
I am not an expert. I've just read a lot of his stuff.
You know,
he and Stephen King did 2 books together, and I look forward to the day when I do something like this and I get 50 million angry tweets from all of you who are like, well, actually, it's this book, because I've done that to other podcast hosts before.
And you know what's going to happen? Because we don't have a huge listenership right now.
All 5 of you.
Once we start, like, getting, like, people, they're going to go back and they're going to go back and listen, and we're going to get, like, notifications on stuff like, you said something in the podcast 2 years ago, and you were wrong.
So I was listening to a podcast the other day. I love this podcast. It's great. But someone referred to the short story The Yellow Wallpaper and said it's by Flannery O'Connor, and I swear to God,
really?
I nearly crashed the fucking car. I was so mad. I was like, it's Charlotte Perkins Gilman, god damn it! And I tweeted it at them, and I went and looked in their mentions, and like 50 people tweeted like, that's not who wrote that.
Isn't that also infuriating when you think you're the only person that has that correction?
Man.
You're like, I'm going to get to them first. I'm going to be the one that corrects the... And like 10 people...
49
like,
other angry women were like, you don't know. And then the co-host was like, I see I may have irritated some people last week.
It doesn't even read like Flannery O'Connor, so I don't know what the fuck.
No, it's the guy just totally got his... It was one of those things that happens to me all the time. You totally get your wires crossed. Like, I can't remember the names of the stupid fucking Stephen King and Peter Straub books.
And you read them.
I did. They're about, wait for it, special little boys.
Really? Is there a special, like, disabled, handicapped, or
Person of color?
Person of color?
It's been a while. There may be.
Do they all have a special part to play, come together at the end and save the day?
Just do 2 to 3 people die? No, but it's about a special little boy. And I'm not saying it's a bad plot device. Just everyone who's ever read more than 4 or 5 Stephen King books knows that he does certain things, and one of them is the magical child. Unfortunately, another trope that he tends to use is the magical Negro trope, which is really upsetting.
Is it a special
Abigail
boy
Abigail from The Stand.
Yeah, is it a special boy that saves the day or ruins the day?
Both.
Oh, okay, nuance.
Mm-hmm. Stand By Me, there's like 4 special little boys, but that's a great fucking short story.
I gotta stop you, because there actually is Stephen King news, and I don't want to get to it yet.
Okay, fine.
Okay?
We're going to have a whole goddamn podcast, because I swear every other conversation we have about anything, it usually ends with me being like, you know what I fucking hate? The ending to The Dark Tower, and then it just goes downhill from there.
You're either going to do that or tell me about how much you hate Assassin's Creed.
You really want to bring it up again?
No, but you're going to do it anyway.
It's already happened like 5 times. We've only had a couple episodes.
Okay, so before we were talking about heavy metal, and we were talking about the weirdness of space, right? So I am extremely happy over the next bit of news. Mr. Rockne O'Bannon has announced that there is going to be a Farscape movie.
Awesome.
There might be some people out there who have never watched Farscape.
You definitely should.
One thing I will say about Farscape is that Farscape is one of the only, if not the only show that really shows space to be a fucking weird place.
Farscape space is a fucking nightmare. Like, bad, crazy, weird shit happens all the time, and everyone seems to be from New Zealand.
It's, well, because it was shot there.
I know, I'm just saying.
It is a sci-fi show that completely has its DNA firmly rooted in, say, like The Wizard of Oz or Wonderland.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Just crazy shit happens. The first couple seasons actually linearly make sense, and then the linear structure of the show breaks down, and, like, you skip a couple months and characters show up who everyone knows, like one in particular, and you have no fucking clue who this person is, and like they have the freaking Looney Tunes episode and just all this crap. It's amazing.
Top that off with some of the more inventive character design and makeup and special effects.
It's awesome.
On top of the conceptual ideas, there is no show as strange as Farscape. You might think certain episodes of like Star Trek are weird. Dude, it is nothing. Nothing compared to Farscape.
They still follow classic storytelling tropes and models, and something interesting that Farscape does is they sometimes successfully and sometimes unsuccessfully, they actually fuck with that kind of classic narrative.
Yes, absolutely.
The first episode that really does that is when Crichton has to go through all the different dimensions
Oh yes, where
Remember
there's
that?
the
And
ship.
It's like
the
the
ship
sound.
the ship is in different like temporal dimensions. So
and he has to visit all of them to try and figure out what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
And you, of course, are watching this, and there's one dimension where there's just this screeching noise, and you're like, "This is horrible. What is happening?"
Yeah, it's we love the show. We are absolute fans of this show. I can't wait until this movie comes out. Now, I've actually gotten a little bit more information on what the movie at this point is going to focus on.
Real quick, you want to talk about strong female characters?
Oh, jeez.
They all have their issues sometimes, but there are many of them in this show, and they are all different.
There's like 5 or 6.
All different. Completely. It's great.
There's no confirmation yet whether any of the original cast is going to be in it.
Okay.
However, spoiler alert if you have not seen the show, it is going to focus on the child of 2 of the main characters.
So it is.
Yes.
It's confirmed.
It's going to focus on that character.
That's cool, and I think that's a great idea.
We would love to, of course, see some of the characters that have lived through that series.
Get in the dumpster, Harv.
But yeah, this is great. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
I'm really excited about it. And now that the effects are better, and I have to say, like the ship design and all of the special effects, you still have that whole like sci-fi 2-set deal sometimes, which is totally crazy, and just like everyone should be used to that by now.
But what the art department was able to accomplish in that fucking show, it's unparalleled, really.
It's absolutely beautiful. I will say, something that I've noticed as I've gotten older now, the camera is always moving, rocking back and forth, and it's not that noticeable, but it does get annoying sometimes.
Well, you know why that is? Why they do that in the show? It's to let it's a slight visual cue that the ship is in motion.
No, I know.
Right? I was also going to say the only other comparable show I feel to it is a show out of Canada, which some of you might know, called Lex. Now, Lex was out at about the same time, and it is really weird as well. Completely different. Budget is nowhere near what it and a lot of Lex is truly god-awful. There you go.
I'll watch it eventually. Just, I have other things I need to get to.
If I could be just a male pig for a minute, I also got to say Farscape is also the hottest
they are so
sci-fi show.
Fucking, no, male and female.
Yeah,
there are just a lot of hot fucking people on
everybody's
that show.
Gorgeous and sexy, and like
that space sucks. But if you want to get laid, like, look no further.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I don't care what anyone says. I think Scorpius is attractive. Whatever.
You actually think Well, it's
Wayne.
It's how he acts,
yeah,
right?
Oh yeah. You just once he really nails the voice, because it kind of takes him a couple episodes, I think, for them to figure it out. He's just awesome.
Well, he's
a great villain.
He's basically like Space Hitler Bondage Guy. I mean,
Space Hitler Bondage Guy. If John Waters and Space Bondage Hitler had a baby, it would be Scorpius.
Absolutely. He's fabulous.
He is. He's like, girl. Yeah, he strikes the and speaking seriously for a minute, I enjoy male villains whose effeminacy does not take away from their danger.
Yeah, and he's extremely dangerous.
He's very dangerous physically as well as mentally. He's not just a mental villain. Like, he'll kick your ass.
Well, he's got that side of him, and I don't want to say too much for people who haven't seen the show.
Yeah, he
kind of has a Hulk out kind of thing going on. So,
and there are reasons for that.
So yeah, there are moments where he turns feral.
Yeah, but you have to watch your ass around him, and he's very urbane otherwise, considering. But I do appreciate, just because he's a little fabulous doesn't mean that he can't whoop some ass.
Yeah.
And usually when villains are effeminate, it's meant as a detriment, we'll say.
Absolutely.
And this is good writing.
It's usually shown to be a weakness of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on.
Yep.
So we talked about a couple episodes ago, The Last Airbender show as something people should watch.
Ooh, I heard about this.
One of the co-creators, Mr. Bryan Konietzko, who really is one of these Renaissance guys. I am completely envious of him. One of the things I'm going to do at the end of this podcast is I'm going to put some music that he did through his band Ginormous at the end of this.
He has a band called Ginormous.
They're incredible. They're incredible. So stay tuned for the end of this podcast so you can listen to that.
We still haven't watched Legend of Korra, and there are more problems with that, I think, that people have than Avatar, but...
Avatar's perfect.
Avatar's great. I love it.
It's a perfect story. So he has announced that he is actually putting out an original graphic novel soon.
Oh, okay.
It is called, let me see, Threadworlds. It's also going to center around a young female character who basically travels from planet to planet. I don't know much more about the concept other than that. I've seen some of the original concept art, and it looks fantastic. I'm sure it's going to be great. I mean, Bryan, like I said, his work, either writing or in character design. I mean, he worked as a character design on like Invader Zim and stuff.
Oh yeah, he did. That's right.
He's a genius. So I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be great.
I always appreciate original content, so I'm excited to check it out.
Next bit. So one of my favorite comics of the 80s is making a comeback via kind of a Kickstarter campaign.
It's not Badger, is it?
No, but you're close. Steve Rude has put forth a Kickstarter for the return of Nexus.
Awesome.
Nexus?
You know, he's been drawing a lot of, he's been doing a lot of commission sketches and stuff lately, and I was wondering if something was happening.
Yeah.
Because if you go to his page, it's almost all Nexus right now.
Yeah. So the structure of this is going to be a bit weird. You're going to donate to it, and apparently it's going to arrive via, comic strips.
Huh, okay.
So that's the initial plan for this. Those of you who have never read Nexus was put out by First Comics, and it's Mike Barron and Steve Rude.
Yes.
Mike Barron was also the writer for Badger and a number of other things.
Bunch of other things.
Like Sonic Disruptors for DC.
He didn't write Grimjack, did he? Someone else did.
Ostrander was
did. Okay,
Grimjack.
thank you.
So
I'm just thinking of all the crossovers that have happened between those three.
Well, it's interesting because crossovers have always been assumed to be primarily a Marvel and DC thing. But First Comics back in the 80s crossed over just about every property they had. So there was one called Crossroads, which had John Sable, Badger, Nexus, and I think Whisper, all kind of interacting. And then Badger and Nexus crossed over all the time. It was always the same universe.
That's so weird.
And then Grimjack and a bunch of other ones,
they showed up.
Like Michael Moorcock's stuff, like Elric and stuff would actually cross over with these.
Fucking crazy.
So those of you who have never read Nexus, what Nexus essentially is it's a slight riff on, say, Green Lantern or Silver Surfer. The main character has been drafted into service by an alien, but the tweak is he has to kill people.
It sounds a little Captain Victory-esque, too.
He is somebody who... and he has to kill murderers. It's not like he's a psychopath. He is forced to kill mass murderers. And if he doesn't do it, he actually gets, psychotic dreams and headaches.
Ew, that's weird.
It's a phenomenal comic. Steve Rude's art in that is impeccable. It is perfection.
Steve Rude's art is beautiful. One of the only good things about Convergence is that he did some variant covers for a lot of those, and they're gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever read, I think it's X-Men Children of the Atom, which is not particularly good, but Steve Rude art doing the X-Men, how can you not like that, at least?
Not going to read it.
It's not that good. I wouldn't recommend it.
Mm-mm. For those of you that don't know, I have a full-on Iron Curtain boycott against anything to do with the X-Men. And that, you know what? I budged on fucking Daredevil. I budged on a lot of different things. I'm not fucking budging on the X-Men.
I'm working on it, fans.
It's not happening. It's not happening. I don't care.
You tell me you're not going to read the Grant Morrison run.
Nope, don't care. There's plenty of other shit that I can read by him. I don't give a fuck. Whatever.
You know, you are missing some good stuff.
Yeah,
I'm not one of these people that worship the X-Men.
There's so many other things I could read first, maybe when I'm 95 and I have no other comics to read. Maybe then I'll read the X-Men.
I think
don't you put it in the Dropbox. I will not read it.
I think we're going to go on record here, and at some point we're going to go back and I'm going to play this for you because you're going to be wrong.
No, it's not happening. It's a point of honor now.
Honor? Okay, fine.
Feel free, people, those of you who love the X-Men, to try and convince me otherwise, but I don't have an interest in the characters.
So you're not even interested in, if I were to throw, some mini-series your way that are quite good. Like the First Class one, which is not related to the movie, is really good. Season 1 is really good.
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Verboten. I'm not doing it.
All right, so do you want to move on?
Yes, please.
Okay, so...
Now that 4 out of 5 of our listeners have dropped off.
One of our favorite animated movies is making a brief return to the theaters.
What?
For about a week.
Where? What? What is it?
I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to just immediately spout it off. I'm going to lead you in
Tell
gently.
me.
Yes. Let's see. September 30th, I believe it is. Oh, it's only going to be 2 nights. September 30th, and then later, October 4th.
Secret of Nim.
The Iron Giant.
Oh, I love that fucking movie.
Is returning to theaters. Brad Bird's Iron Giant,
Yes.
which
Oh, it's so good.
people, if you've never seen The Iron Giant, don't see it now. Wait for it to be in the theaters.
Go fucking see it in the theater.
This movie is amazing and has moments. I cry.
I'm a fucking mess by the end of that movie.
I have always cried.
You know, it came out in that weird independent surge of animated movies that happened when
It was around 99.
When I was like 12, 13, 14. So still, going through some changes in my life, but still willing to go see those things. I had like a 5-year period where I was like, that's dumb. I don't want to see animated movies. And then I wised up and went back and started watching everything that I had missed. But a lot of stuff came out around then that was really fucking good. And The Iron Giant is probably the best.
Isn't that when like the animated Treasure Island came out?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's the Stephen King bit.
Is this going to make me mad?
This is going to make you scratch your head in fucking disbelief.
Okay.
Did you know there's a C.U.J.O remake happening?
No.
Now you do. And it gets really fucking weird.
Okay.
Really weird. Apparently.
That's his Coke book.
Apparently.
He can't. He's. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he said he doesn't remember writing most of C.U.J.O.
He absolutely said that.
That was his Coke period, and you can tell.
Okay, so apparently the rights for C.U.J.O have never gone back from the production company that originally did the 80s C.U.J.O movie.
Okay.
So they still have the rights, according to what I was reading, and they're remaking it.
Okay.
Okay? Now, it turns out in this movie, at least according to the scripts right now, C.U.J.O is an acronym, and it stands for Canine Unit Joint Operations.
It should be like Canine Unit Justice Officer or something.
Apparently, and
it should be a dog cop movie.
So basically, the speculation.
Ooh, is it a Terminator?
Is it's going to be like genetically modified robot dog?
I would fucking go see that.
It's going to be a Coke movie.
And the first one wasn't.
Have we talked about what Coke movies are on this podcast yet?
No. I think you need to.
Okay, primer for you folks. We have this theory about Coke movies. What a Coke movie is a Coke movie is basically, and listen, I used to work in Hollywood. A Coke movie is a movie made from beginning to end
on cocaine.
On cocaine, copious amounts of
everyone involved, from the writers to the actors to the grips to the DP, are on coke.
Starting with the writer and ending with the editor.
It's like doing lines. I have a great idea.
They're usually movies with too many ideas and too many ideas that are complete nonsense.
And you're sitting there. It's like talking to someone who is on cocaine. Like, they're in your face, they're breathing on you, you can see the flex around their nostrils, and you're going, wow, I'm glad one of us is having fun right now.
Now, a Coke movie can be any type of genre.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen it? I'm talking to the audience. If you've ever seen North.
Oh my God.
North is a Coke movie.
There's some really unfortunate things that happen in that movie, and I'm thinking of Kathy Bates in Brownface.
That's the kind of thing I mean.
Who the...
I know. Let's do this.
Who the fuck thought that was a good idea?
Some guy on Coke.
I know. Be fair, it could have been a woman on Coke.
Could have been a woman on Coke. Could have been Kathy Bates on Coke.
That would be terrifying.
So, another example is, what's that Arnold movie where he's is it the last action hero where he's the character who comes out of the movie? Okay, that is a fucking Coke movie and a fucking half.
Commando's also a Coke movie.
No, I disagree. That movie is actually relatively contained. No, it is. It's straightforward. It doesn't take any crazy fucking narrative leaps at some point.
What's the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie where he punches the snake?
Death Warrant.
I think Death Warrant.
I'm pretty sure that's Death Warrant.
Give me the money for your daddy.
Sometimes these movies are B movies like that, and then sometimes they're like fucking A-list movies, and you're like, what the fuck?
In rare occurrences, a Coke movie can be a good movie. I don't know if most of you have probably not seen this, but there's a movie starring Meatloaf called Roadie.
Rhodey
That
is on
movie-
all types of drugs.
That movie is insane. You have to check it out. It is fabulous, but it is definitely a fucking coke movie.
Late 70s, right?
I believe so, yes. But yeah, he's
He's the world's greatest roadie.
He's the world's greatest roadie, and he picks up a virgin, and she's phenomenal. I'm not a narc. I'm a virgin.
I have to disagree about that being a coke movie, though. I think that is absolutely a movie which is on every kind of drug.
Yeah, it's just like yeah. Ooh, really classic example of a coke movie. Showgirls.
Showgirls is absolutely
from start to finish is a fucking coke movie.
Yes, absolutely.
I have so many unanswered questions from that movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
For example, haven't we talked about Showgirls already a little bit?
Not here.
I believe, the top question in most people's minds, especially women, is why would you lick the stripper pole? Why would you do that? Why?
Yeah, there's some nasty shit on there.
It's disgusting.
I'm not saying anything against strippers. But
No,
I'm just saying
no, I have
against
nothing.
stripper poles.
No, I have nothing against strippers. Just I don't know any strippers who would lick a fucking stripper pole. That's so gross. You have no idea how many vaginas have been on that. Oh my god, just so disgusting. Like I'm gonna throw up in my mouth just thinking about it.
So you're against licking vaginas?
I'm against licking stripper poles.
Okay, I just want to get that out there because that
Where
sounded kind of rude.
No, I am pro vagina chomping all day, every day. I would like to say too, one really great aspect of Showgirls, Gina Gershon's boobs.
Well, I've watched that movie countless times with the sound off.
I leave the sound on because it's great.
Sometimes it breaks the concentration. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
In
no,
the
no.
same way you watch The Nanny with the sound off.
I don't have. I love her voice. She's great. It's the whole package with Fran Drescher. I love her.
Okay.
And man, did she know how to dress? Holy shit!
Oh yeah.
Fucking awesome.
That's kind of how you want to dress, right?
Yeah. Life goals. Hello. But yeah, Showgirls. From the moment she tussles with the guy who she hitchhikes with and, starts flouncing out of fucking Burger King parking lots, that movie is a coke movie.
So that's C.U.J.O.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the guy directing it has not, and I don't remember his name, and frankly, it's not important. The guy who's directing it has not directed a movie since, like, 93, and it was called The Cage 2, starring Lou Ferrigno.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
How'd he get this job?
Because he does a lot of work for this company. I think he might even be, like, co-owner of it.
Was this a Roger Corman's dead, we need to, like, move on moment?
No.
Or...
No, I, as far as I know, Corman has never had anything to do with this company.
I'm just saying in general. This sounds like it's destined for riff tracks, if you ask me.
Yeah, probably.
I'm gonna go see it. Fuck it.
I doubt this is gonna get a theatrical release.
Oh, damn it.
This seems like it's gonna be a right to a DVD. So that's your Stephen King news of the fucking week. Okay, so I've got, have you ever heard of Seth Gordon? He's a movie director.
Yeah.
Okay, Seth Gordon did the King of Kong documentary.
Yes.
Okay, he also did Horrible Bosses, which I've never seen.
Isn't that the one where Jennifer Aniston sexually harasses somebody? Like she's in it and...
Maybe. I've never seen it.
I think someone has a female boss and it's her and she sexually harasses them.
I am violently opposed to comedies that have been made in the last 15 years. I hate them all.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't find things like Bridesmaids funny.
The Hangover.
None of that shit.
No.
40-Year-Old Virgin.
It's all terrible.
I don't like it.
It's all terrible.
Thanks, Michael Cera. You ruined everything.
So,
except for Drunk History.
Seth Gordon, he's also the guy who recently did the Pixels movie. Okay?
Oh, yeah, that's coming out at the end of the month.
Right. So he did that as well. I'm curious about that movie. I'm not holding a lot of... I mean, it's Adam Sandler. How good could it fucking possibly be?
Right.
But...
he stopped making good movies a long time ago.
He only made like 2 good movies. Seth Gordon was tapped to be the director for the Uncharted movie.
Wait a minute.
I knew you were going to say that.
Wait a minute. Wait, hold on. There's an Uncharted movie?
There's an Uncharted movie in pre-production.
Who's playing Nate?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. You know why?
Why?
2 actors have actually passed on it already.
Who?
I don't think this has gotten past script at this point. And there's a reason for that. Because you know me and and your mother's a film expert, you know one of the death signs of a film that it's going to be terrible is things like multiple writers.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You have Jurassic World, anybody? You have 3 or 4 writers on a screenplay, you know that shit was bad and no one could make it better.
If you doubt this rule, Watch some bad movies and
Go look at the credits.
And look at how many writers are involved in bad
Always.
movies.
It's people trying to salvage some shit and they just can't do it.
Exactly. It means the script usually has problems that they just can't figure out. Chris Pratt and Mark Wahlberg have both passed on this movie.
Damn it, Chris Pratt would have been fucking perfect. And I don't want to see Marky Mark in anything anymore. I'm done with him.
After that Transformers movie, dear God.
Oh no, after I figured out that he blinded a Vietnamese man when he was a teenager, but he's quote-unquote forgiven himself for it.
Oh, that.
Yeah,
so,
like, way to perpetuate some fucking hate crimes, you asshole.
Thomas Dean Donnelly, Joshua Oppenheimer, David Guggenheim, Anne Cormack, and Marion Wibberley have all worked on this screenplay.
That's a lot of really famous names.
Yup.
Like, and I mean famous names tongue-in-cheek. Like, Oppenheimer and Guggenheim worked on this?
Not that Oppenheimer.
That might actually be better if he had.
David Russell was the original screenplay writer, I believe. He was once going to be the guy that directed it. So basically, there have been also about 3 directors who have left this project.
Oh, this is bad.
This is really bad.
It's fucking Indiana Jones. How hard is it to make this fucking movie?
I'm glad you pointed that out because I have basically a quote about that. Now, this comes from some random website called The Latest News Explorer, but I actually looked into this quote, and it turns out it's genuine. Sony Pictures Motion Picture Group chairman Tom Rothman basically came in and spoke in code, and what he said was, Uncharted movie needs a new creative direction. Now, when you have an exec telling you that, you know what that means every time? You don't get as much money.
Oh, yeah.
That is basically a budget cut.
You have to dazzle me on less cash.
And basically, that's exactly what happened. He came in and he slashed the budget for Uncharted.
Fuck.
And according to sources, he has said he considers this movie not to be Indiana Jones, but to be more like Resident Evil.
Okay.
Yes, because
does he know Resident Evil was a video game before it was a series of successful movies? Does he know that Uncharted is a series of successful video games before it was a shitty movie?
Does he realize that the tone of both stories are wildly different?
Nothing alike.
No, when he says that, I think what he's saying is that, hey, I think that this movie should be made under a Resident Evil budget, not an Indiana Jones budget.
Yeah, that makes sense. But, like, that's not a good comparison, and it's laughable, especially considering that they're both fucking video game franchises first.
Yes. So,
what?
There's not going to be a good Uncharted movie.
That's all we know. Fuck that shit. I'm not seeing that. That's garbage.
You know what they should just do? This is simple. You know what they should do?
What?
Should be an animated movie.
Duh. Because no one wants to see...
With Nolan North.
No one wants to fucking see Nate, who's not Nolan North. And I love Nolan North, but I think and he would say this too, he's probably too old to go swinging through the fucking jungle after shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
At this point
you cannot have anybody else playing him.
He's perfect.
No.
He is absolutely perfect.
Without that voice...
He's so fucking good. No.
Oh,
crap!
So speaking of directors...
Sometimes you just make Nate fall off of stuff just to hear him die.
So speaking of directors leaving projects...
Uh-oh.
Remember that whole Justice League Dark thing that was going to happen?
Son of a bitch. What now?
That it was like our last hope, you and me, to actually see John Constantine again in a project, and it was going to have like Jason Blood and maybe the Spectre, and they're going to do this whole Justice League Dark thing, and Del Toro was going to do it. He's left.
Oh, no.
He's not going to do this.
God damn it.
So this is like another Del Toro tease that is never going to happen. Like his planned adaptation of In the Mouths of Madness. So
why do you tell me this shit?
I'm sorry.
Like, you know what, Warner Brothers? Suck my dick. Seriously. Fuck you. Just like everything, they're like the cancer in just everything. Just cut this fucking part out. I'm just angry and not making any sense.
I am not cutting this out. You go. You were the one who wanted to have rants on the podcast. You go, girl.
This is bullshit. Seriously, everything that has to fucking do with DC that comes with a large screen is fucking bullshit in the past, couple of years. And fuck all you Nolan fans out there. Those movies are crap. And it's his fault that we have this godforsaken monstrosity that is fucking Batman v Superman. We can't even put the fucking S in the period in and abbreviate it correctly, much less make a fucking movie that's not like total bullshit. You pull like 5 minutes from the fucking footage that basically shows me Ben Affleck in an old man fucking bat suit with goddamn fucking sideburns on the side of his stupid A-list face, and then you pull some Frank Miller bullshit, take a Superman that actually had some fucking promise, even though all of you assholes hated Man of Steel and I didn't, and you shit all over it. Fuck you, Warner Brothers. You make stupid fucking decisions. I don't appreciate you. You slash budgets for everything that I love. You take animated shows off the fucking air. You ruin movies, and you're destroying everything that's good and pure in this fucking world. I hate you. Burn in hell.
There's no way I'm cutting that out.
I'm mad. That's how I feel. One of my friends the other day at work, I just used it a couple times on this, and I've used it in previous podcasts. I also use it at work. She's noticed that when I get really fucking upset about something, I say it's garbage, and it's generally something that I find idiotic or that I find upsetting, incompetent, generally contrary to my worldview. So we came up with #garbage. And so she'll go, Krista, is this garbage? And you go, yes, it's garbage. And this shit with fucking Warner Brothers is garbage. So we're going to start a fucking segment, among other things, called #garbage. And I will be tweeting about this as well. Some of the news that comes through our tweet account. Some of the news that comes through our Twitter account, if you see #garbage, you know it was me posting it.
So is this the first segment of #garbage?
#garbage. Fuck you, Warner Brothers. Love me.
I guess this is
Eisenhower is not amused.
I guess this is as good a time as any to actually get into the bulk of...
Well, yeah. I mean, now that I'm primed and fucking ready, let's go.
Okay, so last week we had 2 separate fandom outrages over the same issue.
The same suite of issues.
The same suite of issues. Let's talk about.
Let's talk about Justice League 3001 first.
Okay.
Because I feel like you can build from that conversation to get to the second piece.
Yeah, the second piece is obviously more serious.
It is.
Bigger issue.
Definitely.
First one,
in our estimation.
Happened in the first issue of Justice League 3001, which is the continuation of Justice League 3000, the Giffen and DeMatteis Justice League, the cloned Justice League of the future. Now, in this story, Cadmus is a whole planet, by the way.
Not the same Cadmus.
Well, it's like a corporate descendant.
Yes.
Has taken these test subjects and injected them with the DNA of superheroes. But the problem is they come out all wrong. Like,
there's some issues.
Their memories are all skewed. Their personalities aren't right. And
they fuck up some, phenotypical characteristics as well.
And the hijinks ensues.
Mm-hmm.
It is a not so very subtle satire over certain tropes of these characters.
And it's a futuristic continuation of JLI.
Yeah, it's directly too, because the blue and the gold have shown up in this series, and it's the real blue and the gold.
They were frozen. They were in suspended animation. It's actually Booster and Beetle from that time.
Right. So you can say this is a direct sequel, basically after I Can't Believe It's Not the Justice League. Like, this would be the next thing.
Bee and Tora are themselves too. They're just, they've been existing for thousands of years
in their own separate things.
Yeah.
This is not a book that one takes seriously.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a book which has any kind of social commentary. This is basically a book of stupid humor and hijinks and laughs.
Which makes what happened, I think it's fair to say it is a particularly thorny issue to talk about.
It's an extremely thorny issue.
And there are some good points made, and there are some not so good points made.
In our very first episode, you said your favorite character was Batman. That's actually
incorrect.
not true.
I realized I have a short list. Batman's definitely on it. But my favorite comic book character, period, is Guy Gardner.
Now, that is going to seem really strange because you are a lady and your favorite character is basically a chauvinist pig.
The biggest, not stupidest, but sexist, awful, rage-inducing, homophobic, occasionally horrible person.
Conservative.
Yeah. And he's a fucking Republican, too, on top of it. He's an interesting character because he is so controversial and because he is, in a lot of ways, irredeemable. I find him fascinating, and I find him problematic. But
Well, you've mentioned that you actually think he is, in some ways, more nuanced because of all
absolutely.
these flaws than most comic book characters you come across.
Absolutely. He's not a particularly sympathetic character most of the time.
Yet there are times he absolutely is.
Nor does he care to be. You know, this is not, ladies and gentlemen out there, this is not a character who's the brooding, bad boy who can be redeemed. Guy is a fucking asshole, and he doesn't give a shit about anyone. And if you try to redeem him or, make him better, he'd probably laugh in your fucking face. He is what he is, and he's totally fine with it on most levels, and that is a problematic thing because he's a prick, but it makes for great fucking writing.
One of the great functions of him in the Bwahaha era is that
Yeah.
he completely takes the pretension out of Batman.
Oh,
So
and
what
no one can stand up to Bruce, and he does.
Everybody quakes, character-wise, characters quake in their boots whenever Batman's
And
around.
he's like, fuck
and
you.
he is never once fazed by Batman, even though he gets the one-punch treatment,
He
right?
gets the one punch multiple times.
Right,
There's
but-
a great moment in another comic where where Wonder Woman's talking to Superman, and they're on the Watchtower, and Wonder Woman's like, he knocked Guy out, and Superman's like, really? And she's like, Black Canary faxed me a photo. And it's him just totally KO'd on the
Yeah,
on
that's
the floor.
later in either
It is.
the Grant or the Mark Waid
it's
Justice League
fucking
run.
great. I love it. But yeah,
At least I think so.
I'm not entirely sure what it is about him, but I read the JLI run, and aside from being one of my favorite comics, period, there's just something about him I find really compelling. He makes for interesting writing, and I told you, one of my favorite moments is when Metamorpho shows up and actually has a great storyline.
Metamorpho's a great character.
He's an absolutely wonderful character. I can't wait for him to show up in The Flash, because they mentioned, Simon Stagg.
Yes.
And he actually killed Simon Stagg, but we'll get to that. But, Guy fights him, and everyone's always whooping Guy's ass, basically. And Metamorpho fights him, and he puts him down, and he's like, let's back off. And Guy just stands up, and he goes, I'm going to kill you.
And he's completely serious.
He's dead serious. He's absolutely dead serious. And when you compare that to something like the fight that he has with Kilowog, where he goes, that was humiliating.
That was humiliating.
He just has this moment and you kind of take a step back and you go, whoa, he's fucking serious, and you're like, that's not cool. You need to ratchet it down, but you don't see that in comics all that often.
Especially in the DC universe. I mean, I think one of the strengths of Guy Gardner as a character is that he is somebody who, because he lives in shades of gray
Absolutely.
more than a lot of other characters, morally, ethically, and personality-wise, he is a great contrast when you put him against characters like Wonder Woman and Superman, these iconic archetypal characters.
Even the other
he is not that.
Even the other Green Lanterns.
Especially
Hal.
We've even said at times there's almost more of a Marvel quality to Guy Gardner.
Yes, and I think it's the good things about Marvel.
He's basically flawed.
That's the point, he's
right?
very human. But it's important to remember for people who want to rampage on about what a horrible person he is, he's still got that fucking ring.
Yes,
he is
exactly.
a Green Lantern, and he was chosen. Hal just happened to be closer to the crash site.
Okay, so people might not know what you're talking about, but in the Green Lantern lore, the thing of it is who was first choice for the ring that went to Hal?
John, right?
I believe it was John, and then Guy.
And then Hal.
And then Hal. Hal was just closer.
Yeah.
And if you've
and
read...
that says something about these characters.
If you've read the Green Lantern that happens around the time of Crisis on Infinite Earths, Guy never lets Hal forget that.
No.
There's a whole series where Guy basically leads an army into I believe it's the Anti-Monitor's antimatter universe, and basically when Hal tags along, he almost kills him.
Yep.
Like, so
he's just, and a lot of people love Hal. I love some things about Hal. Hal lacks conviction a lot of the time.
Except when he goes full Darth Vader parallax.
And yeah, everyone wants to talk about what a sexist pig Guy Gardner is. Guy Gardner never, he hasn't committed genocide. Guy Gardner never became the Spectre as penance for what he did. I'm not saying that excuses things, but Guy is interesting, and he's a Green Lantern in his own right. He has a pure heart on some level, and I don't say that to be like, oh, he's such a good person. But he's a complex person, and he has pure will.
Yeah, exactly. And he doesn't know fear.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. He doesn't give a shit about Bruce. And Bruce can just, knock his ass out a million times. He's never going to stop making fun of him.
No, and he never does.
Ever. And honestly, those interactions are hilarious in that comic.
And Jeff Johns did a lot for Guy when he started revamping the Green Lantern universe because he I can't remember Johns' exact wording, but he basically said he didn't want Guy to be the blockhead of the DC universe. He wanted him to be the ass kicker of the DC universe.
And he is.
And if you've ever read I don't think Johns actually wrote this. The Recharge miniseries, which was right after Rebirth. So Green Lantern Rebirth brought Hal back. Recharge brought the core back.
Yes.
And Guy Gardner is phenomenal in that. He has a whole speech where he rallies the entire core.
And he goes,
that
he's
is
like,
just unbelievably heroic.
The gist of it is this is we are Green Lanterns. This is what we fucking do.
We're the best.
We are the best. And period. And you're like, damn. And this is the same person that pinched Mary Marvel's ass.
Even though some people are
so not okay.
Some people are going to argue whether or not I can't believe it's not the Justice League actually is canon or not.
I take it as canon because it has some good stories and I enjoy
this guy, this Gardner.
But yeah, he's an asshole and he's problematic and, Mary forgave him, but that doesn't mean that that's okay.
He's also a character that wrestled with mental illness at one point in his canon.
He got hit by a bus.
And he was mentally handicapped.
I'm not laughing at the mental handicap part. There's someone actually illustrated him getting hit by the bus at one point, and it's a really funny panel. It's really bad art.
If I can find it, I'll post it.
He's wrapped around the front of the bus.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember
cartoon
that.
Style.
And
he's an interesting character. He doesn't seem to catch a lot of breaks.
Yeah, he's got a lot of tragedy in his backstory.
A lot of really bad shit happens to him. His brother was killed. Yeah, and he's just interesting, and he's a different flavor in the DCU, and I think he's a welcome addition to it because of that.
One of the things you pointed out, and I hadn't thought about this, is that he is actually, because of all that, because of what we're talking about here, he ends up being a much more interesting and nuanced bad boy character than, say, Wolverine.
Oh, absolutely.
Guy Gardner, for instance, will not. Well, there's some stuff in the Red Lantern stuff. He doesn't just murder people, which is something Wolverine does constantly.
Guy tries very hard not to kill people.
Except for Hal Jordan.
Well, whatever. It's fine.
What has happened in the Justice League 3000 book is Guy Gardner's...
This character, this chauvinistic, male Republican pig of a character...
Yep.
...has been put into a female body.
Yes.
His DNA... has been put into a female body. I think it's important to note that it's his DNA.
Yeah, it's actually something in the critiques that I think is missing, that these aren't actually those characters.
It's not Guy's soul necessarily that has been transplanted.
Yeah, I mean, how would you do that?
Which doesn't discount what people have to say. It just makes it, the conversation needs to be more nuanced, I think.
And because of that, this is not Superman.
Yes.
This is not Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Wonder Woman is a clone too, and the Flash is a clone. There's also a Green Lantern clone.
And the Flash is also female.
But for instance, like the Blue and the Gold, that's the real versions, right? They're the only ones that are Fire and Ice too. You
can't not have Ted and Booster. It doesn't work. It's got to be them.
So in this issue, people are upset because there are things that are being interpreted as being transphobic.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they're not. So Superman says some he's like, not to be rude or anything. And this Superman's a fucking dick. He just is.
It's pointed out more than once in this actual
asshole.
issue that this guy... Okay, just so you know...
And he's stupid.
This Superman's really dumb. He forgets he has certain powers. Like, he forgets he can't... He forgets he can't fly and jumps out windows. He's
He
a knucklehead.
He forgot he didn't have heat vision, too.
Yeah, he is a jock. He is a complete jock.
If anything, he's kind of like Guy.
Right.
Has been portrayed in the past. So there's a scene where Superman goes, not to be rude or whatever, but Guy has a nice ass.
Is it Batman or
Flash? It's the Flash who says, that's a dude. Like, that's Guy in there.
Which is why I'm confused, because it's not. It's his DNA, right?
The problem that article that we read brings...
The women writing comics article?
Yes. The problem that the article brought up that is actually valid is that we actually don't know, because Guy doesn't get a chance to speak on it at all.
Which I'm assuming...
in this particular issue.
...is coming.
Hopefully.
Right?
I would hope so. So my first takeaway from this argument is not to invalidate anything, but merely to say, from my perspective, as a queer person, but as a cis person, I'm just going to wait and see what happens.
Well, that would be the logical thing to do.
Yeah, I don't know if we can pull the trigger on it just yet and condemn it. And some people have brought up some questions, and DeMatteis on Twitter is listening to people and being like, you have some good suggestions, maybe I'll incorporate some of this.
Right, there's no, yeah,
but
exactly.
He's also asking, can you please wait a little while for the story to unfold before you trash the whole thing?
And I really think both of them are just, as am I, just completely confused as to what exactly the problem is. I mean, the Superman character is a jerk. He's saying jerky things. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of a weird fundamentalism involved. Like, why can't you have somebody who is a jerk say jerky things?
Why can't you have problematic characters? I think the argument that a lot of people are going for that needs to be framed correctly is not that that Superman is saying this, not that like in the story this is happening, but why is it still a punchline that Guy's in a female body?
But is that okay. The reason it's a punchline, and I think you agree with me here, is not that it's a man in a woman's body.
Mm-hmm.
It's Guy Gardner
in
a woman's body.
And
that is fucking funny.
I will go to bat for this particular instance and say, solely based on the history of this character and knowing that these writers are building on the history of this character, that I think it's a valid moment. I really do. And if they go into it, I think there might be a payoff.
His name is Guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think the larger conversation, which we'll get into more in the second example, needs to be like, why are we still punching down? True. Which is valid.
But I'm also generally uncomfortable with the idea of taboo.
I agree.
Like you can't... It's so serious you can't ever bring it up at all. Like, because this really, the problem I had with that article, and the reason I sent it to you, is the writer of that article actually referred to this as an assault. Now, that is some very loaded language.
It's pretty harsh, and
especially for a book like this.
I can't speak to anyone's lived experience necessarily, but I am very careful about using words like that, because assault to me means a very particular thing.
When you say assault, unless you're being incredibly sarcastic and you can get that across, like an assault to my senses, this cupcake was an assault to my senses. Or if you
say like it's a verbal assault or it's a slur.
You are so close to actually saying somebody has committed a crime.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
This is almost weird libel shit.
And this is one article, one opinion, not speaking for everyone else who's upset.
Right. And plenty of people are. But I was really looking at this article.
Yeah, that kind of threw me off.
As kind of an example of the temperament of people that I'm seeing with this issue.
There's a certain level of hypervigilance over this one particular instance that I think is inappropriate.
Yeah.
And maybe that means I'm insensitive, but I don't see how we need to make such a huge issue out of this one moment. I think the conversation, as usual, needs to be like, why is this still the humor level that we go for?
And maybe not even inappropriate that it's there, but inappropriate in the level that it's at. It's a little much. Like when you're accusing people of writing this silly funny book, and it really is, as being an assault.
That's a little excessive.
And part of this, I gotta say, I'm not gonna point the writer out of this, is I think a lot of people, and I don't want to get on too much of a tangent here, have learned from the Anita Sarkeesian fucking model. Now, regardless of what you think about her, she has branded herself and she has become a name, and she charges a lot of money to speak, and she has made a hell of a lot of bank over what she does, and is basically being inflammatory and wrong at the same time.
I don't necessarily think this article was entirely inflammatory. It brings up some good points.
It does, but
it's that one assault piece that I was really like, you need to take a step back and look at the language that you're...
It did seem to me like it was kind of begging for attention. Like,
well, I mean, that's the journalism style, period.
And there's a lot of people out there who are competing for space,
absolutely.
for ideas,
Absolutely.
and you have to make your name right. That's what I'm saying is, like, I don't entirely trust this journalistic voice because it feels to me like they're trying to make their name. And
it's clickbait
in the same way like critics like Anita have done by basically putting out these really extreme opinions about things to garner attention.
I agree.
Even though what they're saying is like I said, I don't want to talk about her too much, but it's kind of like 50-50, right?
It's rooted in reality.
It's rooted in reality, even if you're kind of skewing it a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, we spin our journalism. Everything has a bias, and, pieces like this obviously come from a bias. I'm not one to say whether someone's bias is wrong, because I come from biases, but it just... I read it and I instantly got mad, because
that was my reaction.
It's not necessarily the fault of this particular author, it's more the climate of, like, everything is a fucking issue.
Yes.
Everything is the end of the fucking world.
Yes.
And it's like... Okay, so you're taking these, these dudes who prefer to mostly have Three Stooges humor in their comics.
Right.
Who don't respond well to witch hunts, I have to say. Like, they're the wrong people to go after in that way. And then you fucking flame them to death. Not that this article is doing that, but then other people come along and do it too.
It sets a tonal precedent for the way we are going to interact with these creators. And
you're not responsible for the actions of other people.
But in a certain sense, you are.
But you fan the flames.
Right, you're fanning flames.
And just, I'm a little sick of the hypervigilance.
Over every single issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and I understand that we have hypervigilance in
reaction to...
in these mediums, because we can't actually, it's easier to get pissed and hurt by something like this than stand up and say, can we have trans rights? Like, can we have housing rights? I'm not saying that it's easier to sit on the internet and do something. I'm saying that it's easier to get something done about something like this than it is to try and change the system so we can have, housing and healthcare for trans women, for example.
It's
we have these
true.
overarching horrible issues for people on the margins who just get shuffled off and killed and just, like, treated abysmally. I don't necessarily know if we can solve that through a hypervigilance in certain areas of pop culture 100% of the time.
I mean, this is something that's happening basically because things like comics have gone mainstream to a certain extent.
Yeah, so you have a larger audience.
But they haven't. And when I say that, what I mean is, I guarantee you, if I look at the sales for this book, we are talking no more than 25,000 units.
At least this person who wrote this article read the book.
It's true.
They obviously read the book.
It's true. I don't know if they read the previous installment, the 15 issues of 3,000.
I don't think they know Guy Gardner's backstory.
And I don't think they know Guy Gardner's backstory. One of the things that they brought up was how Guy was sexualized.
Guy's always sexualized, though. Even as a dude. Like, there's so many ass shots of him in JLI. Like, it's always booty everywhere.
But it's not the same, right? Because he is a guy.
But, yeah. I actually like female Guy Gardner. I think female Guy, and I'm choosing to say Guy. I'm not assigning a gender pronoun because I don't know how Guy refers to Guy.
At this point, Guy has not, as a character,
Guy
expressed her opinion on this.
Guy has not identified their preference. My instinct is that Guy doesn't give a fuck.
Hilariously, Guy basically goes through that whole issue, punching things and ignoring the rest of the Justice League.
Total badass. Like, Guy is the only person who actually gets anything done.
Yes. And, well, what do you think, for instance, about the criticism of, like, the midriff and the boobs and the ass?
I think that's totally how Guy Gardner would dress if Guy was a woman.
Okay. I mean, that's basically what I'm asking.
And that's my own personal opinion. If people want to argue about that, that's fine.
There's another...
I didn't particularly feel like Guy was being fetishized outside of what Superman said.
And honestly, not as bad as some stuff we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Guy's drawn exactly like Lois in Wonder Woman.
She's attractive, but something people don't seem to understand is superheroes are universally drawn as attractive. Now, we can talk about beauty standards in
yeah.
culture as being symptomatic of that, but when you're dealing with characters that are supposed to be physical, emotional, spiritual ideals as archetypes, they're going to be drawn with a certain physical template that shows excellence. It's the same reason why Greek sculpture looks the way it does.
Just, does every single female superhero need to be running around in a thong? No.
No, exactly.
I'm saying that to make the point.
Yeah, there are distinctions here, and there are absolutely lines that get crossed.
Yeah, all the time.
But I do see, like in this issue, I thought that the guy character was not really sexualized all that badly, like all that much even.
I thought it was pretty standard.
It was
like I didn't really have a problem with it.
There didn't seem to be any like contorted like shots where you see both the boob and the ass that are physically impossible.
Not really. But I'm also relatively I'm comfortable with the gender that was assigned to me at birth for the most part. So I see a female form and I judge it based on my female perspective. I don't know.
Okay, I mean,
I may have less of a problem with it than some trans women might have, and that's fair.
Another issue, and we haven't talked about in this podcast that I'm uncomfortable with is, like I said, there's kind of a weird conservative fundmentalism involved in this, in which
we internalize the hierarchies that we try to wiggle out of.
It's coming across. I'm not saying this is the motivation of everybody behind it, but it comes across as that sex is bad, right? Now I gotta explain something to some people out there. Now I am a white middle class cis male. Okay?
I'm a white middle class queer cis female.
Guess what I like? I like women, and I like women a lot.
Me too.
I like staring at breasts and ass.
Me too.
It does not mean I want to objectify them.
Yes.
Now, men are essentially very simple creatures. Is that we, and this is, fact, we get turned on by visual imagery more than a lot of other things.
Yes.
Women are auditory and men are visual. White, cis, male comic book writers and artists are going to draw what they like. It does not necessarily mean if you see cleavage or ass shots that means we're saying all women are meat. Now I understand that it contributes to a larger cultural vocabulary, but at the same time, when we have the band hammer on every panel of it, like you're kind of denying a very basic aspect of what men like, and that's why a lot of men react badly to these conversations, because they could be like, "Hey, I'm a nice guy. I've never hurt anybody in my life, but yeah, I like the idea of titty fucking Wonder Woman.
Dude, she'd kill you.
Power Girl.
She'd also kill you.
It's true.
But she uses. Well, I like Gail Simone's idea. It's clever. I like what she did of using the boob window as a distraction.
Right.
I think that's awesome.
But you understand what I'm trying to say here is that just because men sexualize, it doesn't mean they objectify. They're two very different things. There's a distinction.
I sexualize too.
Yes.
I didn't just read Batwoman because it was a story about because it was a great queer story.
I
was like,
just a great comic.
I'm like, there are just titties everywhere and butts, and I'm like, I'm in hog heaven right now.
And the way Williams drew them,
oh my god. I mean, the art in that is fucking beautiful, and everyone should read it.
That was one of the best titles out of the New 52, by the way.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that I come to comics also with a bit of the male gaze because I find women, sexually attractive. Right. So I don't necessarily always mind if there's Wonder Woman boobs everywhere. I don't want to put her in pants. If Wonder Woman wants to wear a fucking leotard, Wonder Woman's going to wear a fucking leotard because she can kill all of us. Okay? That's one of those things. Now, does she have to have a shitty contorted waist and nipples flying out of her thing? No, she doesn't.
Quick tangent on this Wonder Woman costume thing because there have been a couple comments about this recently that drove me fucking crazy. The new creative team has said one of the reasons they really like this new look, which is basically head to toe, put her in a fucking potato sack.
I hate it. I think it's really boring.
It just looks stupid. It looks too 90s for me, for one.
Yeah,
it's like
really
something you put on a
looking.
90s male character.
She looks like an X-Man.
But what they said was
a mutant. Sorry.
This relieves us of the responsibility of trying to always second and third guess how we're going to pose Wonder Woman.
That's bullshit because it's a skin-tight suit. It's the same issue.
No, it's bullshit because it's your fucking job.
Yeah.
If you as an artist can't frame it well, maybe you should have that job.
And so
George Perez did it just fine.
And so what you're saying is that you're just like, that is a moment where I'm like, you are trying to just appease me, and I don't appreciate it because you're talking down to me now.
And you can't not put Wonder Woman in a sexual position because she simply wears a certain kind of outfit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's the matter with you?
Black Canary, you know, in the 80s especially, was in head to toe, and you can still, like, get ass cheeks fucking spread.
Okay, so, and in relation to that, do you know who Cara Delevingne is?
No, I do not.
Cara Delevingne is in the Suicide Squad movie. She plays Enchantress. Okay, she hasn't really done much work.
Okay.
But she went on...
I'm kind of curious. Not a lot of people know who Enchantress is, and I know she was part of Ostrander Suicide Squad, so I'm interested to see her in that.
Yeah, she kind of has a weird kind of gothic look to her. She looks good. But she went on this whole thing about how all superhero movies are sexist, which is hilarious because, honey, you're in one. And she does this all standing next to, you know, what's her name, playing Harley Quinn, who's, like, half naked.
She's a juggalo.
Yeah.
Harley Quinn is a juggalo.
I have no hate for that.
And, Harley can dress however the fuck she wants.
Here's a quote from her. Generally, though, superhero movies are totally sexist. Female superheroes are normally naked or in bikinis. No one would be able to fight like that. Wonder Woman, how the hell does she fight? She would be dead in a minute. First of all, okay, this female superheroes are normally naked or in bikinis.
No.
Now, she's talking about the movies. What movie are you talking about? Storm, head to foot. Every X-Men character.
Jean Grey. Yeah,
every X-Men
all
character
of them.
completely clothed.
Kitty
Black
Pryde,
Widow.
Rogue.
Completely covered.
Well, she's got the boob zipper, but that's okay.
And the problem is that there's not enough women in these movies.
Yeah.
Gamora, same thing. Was Gamora showing off a lot of cleavage and ass? Nope.
No, not particularly. It was just skin tight clothing.
Now, in the greater context of comic books, what she's saying makes a certain amount of sense with that.
What she's trying to get at is that there's not enough, and what most people are trying to get at is that there's not enough representation. There aren't enough women.
The other thing she's saying about the whole not being able to fight like that, I guess you've never watched Ronda Rousey then.
Yeah, she fights in her fucking underwear.
Okay, all those people are professional fighters, and they all fight in their underwear.
Yep. Also, Wonder Woman has the fucking wrist bracelets that deflect bullets.
Yes.
She doesn't need fucking armor.
Yeah.
And when she has armor, you know it's serious and you should be afraid.
Exactly. When she comes with that, like,
Oh
Valkyrie
my
space armor.
God. You're like, oh, the shit's going down now.
Because I always assumed because she had, you know, comparable, you know, invulnerability and strength, like the whole thing about her is movement, right? And if you read a lot of the better Wonder Woman runs, like especially the Perez, Wolfman, she's not wearing much. But she is not drawn in a way that's like, come mount me.
For the most part. There are certain shots where it's like, whoa, that's a lot of booty. But yeah, I mean, Diana is a character in particular that I feel that this argument does not apply to.
I agree.
Because Diana is the strongest out of all of them. And because she is who she is and she comes from where she comes from, I fully believe that character chooses to wear what she wears, and if, like, you can't tell her to put on pants. You just can't do it. It doesn't make sense for her character.
Now, though, through history,
every time they try and change it, it fails.
Yeah, but the whole skirt becoming a bikini thing has something that has absolutely happened over time.
Oh, yeah, like, she used to wear a skirt.
And the underwear had just gotten smaller and smaller and smaller.
She doesn't need, like, the Baywatch fucking, like, you know, hip bone leotard. But it can cover her butt.
But the thing is, yeah, you can separate, like, she can be dressed a certain way. You don't have to pose her in a certain way.
Exactly.
That's your job as a fucking artist. And if you lack the creativity to do that, I don't think you should have that job with that kind of level of a character.
Not at all. We should loop it back into Guy because I don't think
that's all I wanted to go in with this.
I don't think we were done talking about that.
So let's get back to this the transphobia issue of Justice League 3001. So
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I don't think this one in particular merits the amount of vitriol we're seeing.
I agree.
And I'm not singling out this particular writer of this article as being vitriolic because I do think they raise some good points.
I don't think it's above critique.
No, I don't think
but I think it's definitely above vitriol.
Definitely don't think it's above critique. Now, do we want to talk about
the next case of this?
Because Okay, so I'm pretty sure the author of this article did exactly what I did, which is when I wonder if Guy Gardner has ever been portrayed as a woman before. And then you do what I do. You Google Guy Gardner woman, and the first hit that pops up, you go, what's Gal Gardner number 42?
Gal Gardner Warrior issue number 42,
and
1996.
then you go and you look, and you marvel at the shittiness.
Yeah.
And what this author has to say about that is spot on. It's just crap.
A lot of the critique I've seen for the 3001 issue should be going to this issue.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, the thing of it is...
But no one's going to read that.
This exactly is what I'm talking about as far as comics going mainstream. No one gave a crap when this issue came out in 96.
And I actually found it on someone's blog where the woman who wrote about it was like, I'm pretty sure the writer of this knew the book was going to be canceled in a couple months.
And it was canceled after 2 or 3 issues, actually.
He was just like, fuck it. Guy Gardner's a woman in this issue.
Now, me personally, I have only read little bits of Guy Gardner Warrior because it's just god fucking awful.
I am going to be embarking on a total comprehensive reading history of this character. Anything that has Guy Gardner in it will pass before my eyeballs, and you will hear me probably complain vociferously around shit like this.
Now, I'd never read this issue.
Oh my god, it is amazing.
Until, like, last night, because
this has everything wrong with it that people are talking about.
Oh, yeah. This one is totally what you think it is.
It is balls to the wall, 100% gimmick of tee-hee, it's Guy Gardner with titties.
And basically what happens, the plot of this is Guy Gardner literally wakes up.
And is a woman.
He's been turned into a woman.
Solely because his arch nemesis...
Dementor
has kidnapped some supermodels and wants to fuck with Guy Gardner.
Yeah, there's a couple hilarious writery things here. First of all, there's no explanation of how he can do this.
None at all.
Like, Dementor can just do shit like this.
Yep.
I was reading it, and the whole time I'm like, well, how?
Like, how did this happen?
How did this happen? After a while, Guy isn't even questioning how it happens.
I'd also like to point out the guy just randomly changes back.
Well, no. They convince him to change him back at the end, remember?
But it's just like poof, and then like there's not even a puff of smoke. Guy's just...
The next panel, he's back to his Arnold body.
And, Warrior in and of itself is a very problematic thing. It's a fucking white dude running around with like some war paint.
It's not, but it looks very Native American.
Yeah. He went into the jungle and found this power, and now he's warrior. It's an
alien power.
I know, but it's very 80s, like, culturally appropriative.
And because the 90s comics are behind it's the 90s, right? And it's filled with every 90s trope. It looks like McFarlane art. It looks like Rob Liefeld art.
There's this one shot. So Dementor makes Guy walk the runway. And
set to the Right Said Fred music.
Yeah. And model particular outfits, including just like these titty outfits everywhere.
Because that's what you do when you're a woman.
Yeah, and there's this one drawing with Guy of a teeny tiny waist and thighs that are like if you put 6 people's thighs on top of each other. That's
his thighs
look like.
are bigger than his whole body.
They're like 6 feet long. It's hilarious.
I stopped at that frame and stared at it. I was like, no.
And it's hilarious because the art is so terrible.
It's atrocious.
But yeah, that is hitting all of those notes of like, Guy goes, how do you cross your arms with these things in front of you? And he's pointing
stuff. He says this stuff.
Yeah, he's pointing to like his fucking porn star boobs.
And every frame of him is basically sexualized.
Absolutely sexualized to the max.
And like full on, we're talking like porno actress type poses.
Yeah.
The whole time.
It's just totally ridiculous. And yeah, that's totally like the entire humor and entire crux of the issue is tee-hee, Guy's a woman.
When he says the stuff about his own breasts, what does his girlfriend say? Like, well, at least you're not pregnant?
Yeah, at least you're not pregnant. All it's missing is a period joke.
And there isn't one, surprisingly, but I think editorial might have pulled them back on that one.
And, I may be unpopular for saying this, but I feel like there are ways you can make period jokes funny.
Technically, you should be able to make anything funny.
I agree.
It's theoretically possible.
But this issue is definitely punching down.
It's also terrible.
Yeah, it's just awful.
The 3001 thing that is actually I enjoyed that issue more than I enjoyed the whole previous run of 3000. I didn't hate the 3000 run, but there were things that were hit or miss for me.
Yeah.
I thought the first issue, 3001, was like a home run. I loved this fucking issue.
So, for my personal last kind of take on this, I'm just going to say I'm reserving judgment on this until I see more of the series.
Yes. Until we have more elaboration on the character,
I think people are pulling the trigger a little early.
I agree. You want to move on to the
which is
much
larger issue.
A much larger issue, a much more difficult issue, much more uncomfortable issue. This is the James Robinson Airboy debacle.
And I will say I read his apology and then I read the comic, and I think he did a good job of really grasping what was wrong with it.
Let's start out with some real basic stuff. I'm not going to go into the history of Airboy or anything, but I just want to say that I was loving this comic.
Absolutely.
I loved the first issue. I loved it. I mostly liked the second issue. Where this comic went with the transphobia, I feel was a little much.
Mm-hmm. I feel it was more than a little much.
When I initially heard the outrage and I was looking at some of the criticisms, I thought this might have been a 1 or 2 panel off joke.
It's like 5 or 6 pages.
It's the last third of the book.
It's really extended, and it's really excessive.
It's quite pornographic, and the whole point of it basically is, isn't it funny somebody is getting blown by somebody who is transgender or transvestite? Like, there's no line separating that either.
And I'm quoting here, he refers to, the character in the comic refers to trannies, drag queens, and I believe transvestites, all kind of as interchangeable.
Yes. Now, the defense James has of this is that he is actually writing a particularly douchebag version of himself.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's autobiographical in the extent that this is before James was sober. A lot of this book reads like, Hunter S. Thompson.
It's really intense.
It's really intense with the debauchery. The problem with how he uses these individuals is that
they're shown as the pinnacle of debauchery. Airboy, it's metatextual. Airboy, it's impossible to tell if this Airboy who comes to visit is a hallucination or not. The whole thing is like Airboy's talking about, well, the Nazis won because this world is dirty and horrible and crude.
I loved all that aspect of this book.
But then they go to a bar and there are transgender people there, and that narrative is continued, and
right.
And transgender people are basically made to seem like that's the last straw. I mean, Airboy comes storming out of the bathroom stall after getting blown very graphically by a transgender woman, and
you never see their faces.
Yes, and goes, that woman had a penis, and that's not okay.
No.
And that's the last straw that makes him transport them to his world.
Do you think it would have been better if, because that's not out of character for, Airboy, who is a Golden Age character?
I think it's out of character for Airboy to randomly get a blowjob.
That's what I was thinking.
It seemed very cheap and kind of slapstick. Oh, isn't it funny that James is getting one and Airboy's right next to him?
Yeah. But they're trying to draw that Tyler Durden line. You don't know if Airboy's actually even real, or if he's there, or if they're imagining their Airboy. So,
but again, you don't need to use the transgender women to get that point across.
Well, here's the litmus test for me when I was reading this.
Yeah.
I sat there and went,
"This is important.
Can I take this out of the story without losing anything of the story?"
100% yes.
Yes, you can take it out.
And in my estimation, you can take it out and it would actually have made it better.
It probably would have made it tighter. Because even if we didn't have these issues about the transphobia in the social way, I felt that it was kind of like this weird stopping point in the story. It didn't flow as well past this point.
It didn't flow well. It seemed like it was designed to make you uncomfortable. And it was a little designed to be like, look at how bad it's gotten. It felt a little artificial to me.
And there are plenty of other ways that you can depict the social decay of America. You
and
know,
transgender people are not an indicator of social
No,
decay.
you
If
could-
anything, it's an indicator of social expansiveness.
I mean, if I was rewrite, you know, we want to
Yeah.
do rewrite segments.
Do
I would
you?
I would kind of have it be like, imagine if Airboy was confronted with a bunch of things simultaneously and kind of had this nervous breakdown in some way. Like, he simultaneously watched, like, UFC in, like a TV, like, through a store window while some guy was shooting up in a corner across the street and cops beat somebody. Like, he would see, like, these 3 or 4 things, and that is what makes him snap.
There are ways to do it with violence, I think, that make more sense to that character. You don't have to, and again, I'm going to say it again because this one really is, you really don't have to punch down.
Yeah, and it is punching down.
James talks about that in his apology. He's like, I realized that it was punching down, and as much as I was trying to use it as an illustration of the character that I was creating being a bad person at the time, like, I really don't need to take a shit on a population that has more than enough crap to deal with.
It's true.
I feel that's fair.
I think it's absolutely fair. I read James's apology.
I thought it was good.
James is somebody I've had immense respect for as a craftsman, as a writer. He is phenomenally good. His apology was dead on. I felt it was completely sincere. I applaud him in every way. One of the other issues I have with this is that what we're not talking about here, and of course, because this was so fucked up, we're going to miss something about this book. And I feel bad for James because he's not going to get a certain amount of credit, and maybe this is fair. Maybe it's justice. For what he has done in this book with this autobiographical account of him at his worst and showing everybody in the world his worst side, his demons, his fears, his cowardly, cruel ways. I think he's been monumentally brave as a writer to put this book out.
And we're talking about, in terms of the story, sectioning off.
Yeah.
The transphobia, because as we
said,
you can lift it bodily out of the text, and the text survives.
Yes, and if you were to do that, you would see
You'd
a
have
book
a better story
that is just
beautiful.
I mean, it's beautiful in its own way, and the fact that he is so uncompromisingly telling you what he's afraid of as a writer, and what he's afraid of from you fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was blown, like that. Like I said, that first issue blew me away with what he was saying.
And I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. I thought, and I'm gonna point to a scene in the first book, the job of the debauchery a little better and didn't punch down as much.
And it was funnier.
It was funny.
He's basically leading the artist through a night of William Burroughs, Hunter S. Thompson.
And you see this woman from a distance, and she looks kind of voluptuous, and the artist, I can't remember his name, the artist on the comic is like, well,
yes.
Like, please don't talk to her. And James is like, not everyone wants to be alone. And then you turn the page from this kind of soulful moment, and they're double teaming her on a fucking desk.
And she looks bored as hell.
She looks bored as hell. The problem is that she's depicted as kind of fat and ugly.
I didn't get the ugly part. I didn't think
she just looks kind of irritated.
She looks kind of irritated.
But there's a certain amount of grotesqueness about it.
Yes.
I think it's equally distributed among the 3 participants in terms of the art.
Yeah, also, I mean, you got to remember, like, the panels following that, which is like the morning after, both the males are depicted as kind of grotesque in their own right, with their, is explicit with their flaccid, like, spent dicks, just like, and their horrible, horrible out of shape bodies. I thought it was fair.
Yeah. So what I look at that as kind of like a transmet moment.
Yes. There are elements that actually kind of remind me of Warren Ellis' early work.
I wasn't particularly offended by it as a woman. I thought it kind of nailed the right note it needed to nail, and by giving her a little bit of personality, she wasn't just like in ecstasy. She was a little like, I've had better.
Exactly. Yeah,
While
that's why
it's happening, she's like, this is all right, I guess.
Like, the only one who seemed to be enjoying himself in that splash page was James.
And he has his head thrown back in like this sublime moment, and she's like,
And he's buried under her, and he can't see.
Yeah, it's just
that right now is a nominee for Splash Page of the Year, as far as I'm concerned.
So while that's not perfect, and I'm sure the feminists are going to fucking rage on and on about that, and I can see why they would. I'm just saying, I had less of a problem with that, and I feel like it does the work that whole like kind of uncomfortable spread about trans women should have done.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I phrased that wrong. That scene carries the load that shouldn't have been distributed onto the backs of these characters.
You could have just had Airboy discovering things on the internet as a plot device,
Yeah.
like
porn.
Like you wouldn't have to show it. You could
I do appreciate them giving him a pot brownie. I thought that was funny.
That was great.
But yeah, like the pot brownie is like, and there's a lead up to it, and I knew where this was going. Because being a queer in the Bay Area, they go to Dolores Park.
Yes.
Where all the fucking queers hang out. And, there's a pot brownie, and I'm like, now they're going to go to a bar, and, like, something's going to happen with a queer character or something like that. Like, where it's going.
So you were able to predict that?
Yes. Because it's tropey. You're like, oh, they're going into the opium den now. Like, they're in the land of sin. And that's the problem. The problem is coupling the sinfulness and the vice and the shame and the dirtiness of the world with trans characters, and that's just not okay. And I'm not putting his head on a stake for that. I'm just saying it's not okay. I'm critiquing it as a piece of work, and I'm saying it was a misstep.
Yeah, absolutely a misstep. And the fact that he was like
receptive
and was like, see, I don't think his apology seemed fake to me. I think he was kind of like, you're right. You're right.
Like, I messed up. And I think that's fair. And for me, at least, for me as a reader, I'm not trans, so I don't have much to say on it. Beyond that, I'm satisfied. It's up to trans people to say if that's satisfying for them.
And one of the problems we have, though, is that if the last 2 years have shown us anything, it's like this kind of outrage does not breed forgiveness. A lot of people who once get on a shit list stay on that shit list. A la Mark Miller or Rick Remender. There are people to this day, even though they were wrong.
But if you're
like, I'd never read a Rick Remender book.
No, but if you notice, those issues are ones that the straight, white, cis feminists have more of a problem with. I'm seeing a lot more people who are like, thank you to his apology.
Yeah, well,
a lot of trans people are like, thank you. Not that you have to. Like, just because someone apologizes doesn't mean you have to be like, yay! It doesn't mean you burn them at the stake, but it doesn't mean that you're like, oh, thank you so much.
But that's what we want, right?
But I'm seeing a lot more dialogue.
We want creators to be bold enough to make mistakes and to put stuff out there that's challenging, confrontational, like if that's what they want to do. This is what I mean about taboos. I don't want to have taboos in art. And James put something out there that was questionable and had problems, and
it got critiqued.
And it got critiqued. And most of the critiques I saw about Airboy were really good.
Yeah.
Like showing exactly why it was wrong. It wasn't inflammatory. It didn't call attention to the critique itself, right, as being clever. And this is the dialogue we want out of this.
Well, I think it speaks to the audience for a book like this. It's not going to be the people who are reading, Daredevil or Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's true.
Or the mainstream shit. It's not the fucking Marvel movie feminist fans. It's kind of the weird.
It's the indie fans.
It's the weirdos. It is the queers. It is the trans people. It is the people who are searching for content that mirrors our own experiences. And then you come across this and you're like, oh shit.
It's the people who've read Ghost World and Funtown and Strangers in Paradise.
I love that he takes a shit on Daniel Close. I think it's hilarious.
Great. While taking a lot of shits on DC editorial as well.
Oh yeah, which is totally...
Burn that bridge, James. Burn it.
Burn it to the ground. Dear Dan Didio. But yeah, I think there are a lot of really awesome and beautiful things about this, and then there's a moment that was a fuck up.
Yep. And when you get serial narratives, that happens.
I will continue to read this comic.
I'm actually even more interested now because of the fuck up.
I'm curious to see if that informs the writing for the better, because James seems like someone who would take a moment like this and learn from it and actually make his art better.
Which is what a real writer does.
Not safer, but better.
Right. And if he can get himself out of this kind of hole,
yes,
in a sense, like I want to see him as somebody interested in the craft of writing. I want to see how he does this.
Yeah, me too.
Does he ignore it from now on? Does he add something to put it in a better light? I mean, will we see a trans character down the line?
Maybe.
I mean, it's entirely possible, right? Turns out Valkyrie is trans. If you know Airboy, you know what that means. But
I think it's not the responsibility of every trans fan who has read this to be like, I'm going to stick with it. I'm just saying I plan to. That's all.
I would also say, like I said in the beginning, this book is really good.
It is.
Like, this was a hiccup and this was a problem and this was bad.
It's a major
but
problem.
it's a really good book.
Other
Otherwise,
than that, yeah.
like I really love this.
It's
book.
not easily dismissible.
No, and it shouldn't be. Like, honestly, you can kind of dismiss Justice League 3001 in a certain way. Like, you don't need to read that book.
No.
Like, you
If it goes south and it's just like, guy has a vagina, I'm just going to be like, ugh, and put it down.
I would recommend Airboy.
Yeah,
like, I would be
definitely.
like, you should read this. This is interesting.
It has potential to do some really interesting stuff.
There is I like both things, but there's absolutely a difference between entertainment and art, right? Like sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're wildly different, but one is definitely entertainment, one is definitely art.
So to me, I think it's the moment itself in terms of taking a chance, fucking it up, listening to people, learning from it, and then, potentially doing better is great. And I think folks who are scared to try things in art can take a look at what he did and how he responded to critique and learn how you should do things.
Also learn how you should critique things. Absolutely. Like I said, it is night and day, not only the books, but the people who are critiquing things. Like, this is the model you should follow, not what we're seeing with some of the Justice League 3001 stuff. But at the same time, it's like what you were saying. Who is reading which book, right?
And this is not to say that this is respectability politics here. We're not saying you have to, be, quote, that lovely word that everyone uses as code. You don't have to be articulate about it. But
we're not. I wouldn't even classify us as particularly articulate.
I just went off on a huge fucking rant about Warner Brothers using sexualized language and all that stuff, and I still say suck my dick to them. You don't have to have an academic critique. I do think you do need to be like, I have a problem with this, and here's why. You have to tell someone here's why. And I don't actually agree with 100% of the time burning it the fuck down.
No, there are very few cases of that.
Anger and hurt are justifiable, but if you want to get something changed, you have to at least tell the person what is wrong with it.
You have to be able to talk to not only the creator, but say the fans of the creator in a way that they're going to understand. See, one of the things
that's not saying academic language. You just have to find a way to communicate.
One of the things that's lost in this is how we basically have critiques that are just as divisive as some of the works we're seeing, right?
I'm reading critiques by people who don't read the material that they're critiquing, and that's what I'm talking about.
But at the same time, they're doing it to basically fan the flames of the people that already agree with them,
exactly.
not necessarily to change the minds of the people that don't agree with them.
Or to even have a dialogue with the creator.
And for me, that's what is missing. It's like the whole point is you want that creator to do better, and you want the people who might support that creator to maybe see things from your point of view. You can't get that across if you're saying what you're doing is an assault.
That's just going to turn people off, and you're not actually going to get the result that you want.
I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are of my persuasion, right? Straight white males who are on the fence on a lot of things. We don't have all the information, but when we see somebody come at us, it's our natural instincts to often push it away, to react against it, and to basically go, well, fuck you.
That's not to say that everything that people do has to cater to you guys.
Right.
But it's pointing out a side effect that does happen.
But if you want to achieve an effect,
exactly.
like if what you want is for...
If you're hurt and you want to yell about it, that's your aim for this particular thing, fine. Like, people pop off about stuff all the time. You don't have to be...
Yeah, we did it here.
You don't have to be flawless. Like, and, there are, when you run out in the world and you're worried potentially about someone finding out that you're trans at your job and getting fired, or your landlord finding out that you're trans and kicking you out of your house, or you don't have a home, or you're in sex work, and you happen to then, and I'm not blaming Jeff for this, but you happen to then read a comic and be like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Maybe someone's going to go on the internet and be like, you know what? Fuck you, buddy. And
right,
that's
sure.
Totally fair.
Sure, absolutely. I mean,
no one's going to be flawless all the time.
There's no easy answer in any of this. That's kind of
what
I'm saying.
But I would say more the people who have the space and the privilege and the spoons to do it need to up the ante and have a better dialogue.
Absolutely.
I feel like in talking about certain queer issues, I have a fucking responsibility to do better. Yeah. Because I have the space and the time to do so.
Well, I think when it comes to all these issues, we all should do better. I mean, people, like I said, the white males like myself need to do a much better job of listening and less of a job of reacting. Like, that's our problem. Is like, whenever we are challenged, we're just like, well, screw you. Like, I just want my Jimmy Olsen white. What's wrong with that? He's always been white.
Which is super helpful.
Fucking
but,
pointless. I think they're all just uncomfortable that the guy who's playing Jimmy Olsen in Supergirl.
Very attractive.
Very attractive man.
Very
I think it's making a lot of men feel uncomfortable about themselves.
He should, because I'm like, if it was anyone else, I wouldn't call you James, but I'll call you James.
I'll call you James.
He's a good-looking dude.
He is a very good-looking dude, and I am not afraid to say it.
I think he's a good choice for the character. Like, I think he's going to add some.
With what they're going with on that, I get it.
He's a little more grown up, but he's still got that, like, sparkle that Jimmy has. I would just say again, like, I'm not particularly calling anyone out, and I'm careful about what I say about certain things, because it's not
unless it's Warner Brothers or Assassin's Creed.
Warner Brothers. But in terms of trans issues, I'm not trans. I can only speak so much. I support people in having dialogues and critiquing and pointing out ways in which media can just, like, kind of take a shit on you.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true.
But I remain skeptical about certain aspects of call-out culture, and certain aspects of call-out culture, ironically, happen to be the people with the most privilege.
Yes.
Most of the time, the people who scream the loudest are the ones who aren't really concerned with the issue at hand.
No.
They just want to hear themselves talk.
Well, it's their job.
And then they drown out legitimate conversation. And that's the problem I have with some of this stuff.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, some of the critiques of that Justice League were just so divisive and angry that it's hard to really get a handle on what the issue is. Like, for instance, we didn't talk about this, but I don't understand, is the issue with the Superman character saying it's basically a woman?
It's unclear.
Or is it the issue with Batman, who is basically saying, no, it's still a guy? Like, both of those points of view are both problematic, right? Because in the end, who is more open-minded? Well, the Superman character, actually.
The issue raised by that article is that Guy doesn't get a chance to advocate for themselves in the comic, which is fair. And the one that I thought was fucking pedantic is Batman doesn't stand up enough. And fully call out the transphobic language, and I'm like, Batman wouldn't, period. So that argument is invalid.
It's not. Also, it's not actually Batman. And how many panels
of it... But Batman wouldn't.
How many panels of it do you need? Because he goes on for, like, it's a good 6-7 panels.
And then Batman's like, he's basically like, you're a douchebag.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line. Like,
he tries to explain it to him, and then just gets so frustrated that he's not getting it that he gives up. To me, it feels authentic to the character that I think they're trying to build.
And so you're also saying you want, like, two basically white cis males to have an elaborate discussion over something they're not?
That feels very artificial to me and very imposed, and I don't appreciate that kind of policing.
And maybe down the line they have plans for, Wonder Woman having an issue with his, and maybe she will speak out about it.
That would be a great...
that's how I would write it.
That would be a great character to bring that up.
It's the perfect character.
Or the Flash, who is female.
Who is also female, and she's got Barry's DNA.
Yeah. She could be like, look, I
did this first.
I had to come to terms with this. I still haven't come to terms with this. You use the pronouns I want you to fucking use, and that's the end of it. And Superman's going to be like, but I'm boning you.
Right.
It's different.
Right. Oh, we forgot to mention that he actually is banging the gender-swapped Flash.
Yep.
So.
Which is awesome. I mean, really, as in Multiversity, it should be Barry and Hal, but
always.
That's okay.
Always.
We'll let that go for now.
So while all that was going on, the transgender issues with Airboy and with Justice League, there was another issue happening that no one was talking about. Apparently, legendary Holly Woodlawn, do you know who that is? Holly Woodlawn is a transgender actress.
Oh, yes, I do.
Who was one of Andy Warhol's discoveries, was in Women in Revolt, for instance.
Yep.
Is unfortunately gravely ill.
Oh, no.
Holly is in the hospital at Cedars-Sinai. They have found lesions on her liver and brain.
Oh, jeez.
And they're currently... It doesn't look good for Holly. So her friends have put together a Kickstarter for her called Bring Holly Home.
Okay.
What this is this is a Kickstarter to pay her medical bills so she can spend time at home and not in some anonymous hospital room.
Great. Mm-hmm.
So you can go. This is on GoFundMe, actually. If you just search for Bring Holly Woodlawn Home, you'll get the site. They have currently raised $52,000,
awesome.
and the goal was $50,000.
That's fabulous.
So with all the anger and calling out, this is something positive. I think a lot of people who might be interested in this issue should go and probably spend a couple bucks.
Yeah,
please.
definitely.
I mean, we can bitch and moan about a lot of this stuff, and some things we're right about, and some things we're not, but here's a person who is basically a trailblazer in this specific issue when it was extremely dangerous, and
it's still extremely dangerous.
It's still extremely dangerous, but here's somebody we can help.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So we at Bloodbath would actually really like it if people would go over there and donate to Holly. And if you've never seen Women in Revolt, what's the matter with you?
Yeah.
All right, so we can move on to, I've got some wrestling stuff we can cover.
Oh, God. What happened?
Well, first of all, let me point out that Bret Hart was commenting on, and he has said that he thinks Daniel Bryan's done.
Okay.
That Daniel Bryan will never recover from the current injury. Now, I wasn't even aware of what the current injury was. Turns out that he's got a concussion that is comparable to what Bret had that ended his career.
Okay.
Thanks, Sheamus.
Yeah, thank you. People who haven't been in the industry for long enough to actually have been trained by reputable people and know what they're doing, or...
Yeah, yes. Well, I mean, I don't want to throw too much shade Sheamus's way. Accidents do happen. I just happen to hate Sheamus both as a mark and as a smart mark. So...
He's a company man.
But yeah, Bret has said he doesn't think Daniel Bryan will ever be back.
Really?
Yep.
Well, that's a damn shame.
Damn shame, yeah, absolutely. He could have been, he basically was, even though it's funny, he was trained by Shawn, he was the next Bret Hart in a way, because he was like the next technical guy.
Hopefully not with the same outfits.
No, hopefully
I'm sorry,
not.
ring apparel.
But the other thing about wrestling, over the past 2 weeks or so, we have had 4 wrestling events happen.
Mm-hmm. Did King of Trios happen yet?
King of Trios did not happen, but Evolve is this weekend. So
okay.
That's why I wanted to get some of this wrestling, even though this episode is running long, I wanted to get this wrestling coverage done with so I didn't have to cover 5 events next week.
Okay.
So what we had, and all of these have weird implications for the industry. So we had TNA Slammeversary.
No one cares.
We had WWE The Beast in the East.
What?
I'll get to it. We had ROH Best in the World, and we had New Japan Dominion.
Ooh.
Now I'm gonna go from least
awesome to shitty?
No, I'm gonna go from least I'm gonna work up. So we're gonna go from least interesting to most interesting.
TNA.
Nope. We're gonna go with Beast in the East for the first one.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
This is interesting though, because Beast in the East is not a pay-per-view because of the way the WWE Network works now. It's kind of slowly eroding the pay-per-view model. At least that's what I think is going to happen.
Okay.
This was a 2-hour event. This was not a 3-hour event. Now, this was a show that normally would have been a part of, say, an international tour, would have been more like a house show.
Okay.
And the fact is, if WWE starts broadcasting events like this, I think it could be really interesting, and we're going to see more of a good product. Kurt Angle said his best match of his career was an untelevised match he had with The Undertaker in Japan. So the fact is, I mean, the way I look at it, the more wrestling, the better. And I've been curious to see if the WWE Network is going to be changing the way the narrative model for pro wrestling, at least for their product, works.
Well, it desperately needs it on their end, so.
So yeah, we had an event called The Beast in the East, and Brock was the draw.
He's always the draw. Lately.
Even though he's not the main event, he was in the smack in the middle of the card, and he only had a squash match against poor little Kofi Kingston.
Oh man, why they have to throw Kofi under the bus?
Hey, Kofi is a heel nowadays, so
well, but still, God forbid we actually give him a title push. He's only been around forever.
Well, he's African American. He's not ever going to have a world championship in the WWE.
Mark Henry had one.
It's Mark Henry.
Yeah.
He's a monster, and I don't mean that way. I mean the fact that he's physically a monster. Vince loves
huge.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, just it's racist as hell.
So there wasn't, as far as wrestling goes, in my opinion, there was very little here to be excited about. There was a match returning Chris Jericho and Neville.
Oh, Adrian Neville.
Yeah, Adrian.
Pac.
The issue with this one, like, this is a match I wanted to see, but I think Chris Jericho is still solid. He's still a great worker.
But he's getting older.
And you can tell.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Especially against somebody like Neville.
Yeah.
Who is this physical Adonis? Who is this, poetry in motion? Mm-hmm. I'm not ashamed. I got a bit of a man crush on Neville.
I was about to say you wanna maybe see what's under them tights there.
It's not like he's such an amazing physical ideal. Like it really is kind of like a Greek statue. It's like that is the physical perfection.
Yeah. Aesthetically, you can appreciate his body, and he's got a banging body.
It's amazing.
And what he can do in the ring is just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's like his ability to be as versatile as he is almost unparalleled.
And that comes from the sheer ability he has to work his ass off.
Yeah,
because that's what he's been doing since he was a teenager. If you haven't, I would recommend going to listen to Pac's podcast with Colt Cabana on Colt's podcast. And if you're listening to us, you probably know who Colt Cabana is. I would hope so.
But you might not. I mean, Colt Cabana is an indie wrestler who's been around for a long time.
And he's doing it for himself.
And he is... I think he's the first wrestling podcast, really. He follows the Mark Maron's podcast model. Mm-hmm. So he brings guys in and he interviews them, and he's interviewed like everybody.
He's well into the 200s at this point. It's called The Art of Wrestling, and he, as he puts it, he sits down with his friends basically and talks shop.
Yeah, and there's ones by people you would never have heard otherwise, like Johnny Saint, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
And Keith Kutaro, like, he interviews people who barely speak English.
The Keith Kutaro one was great, and Johnny Saint, thank you, Sarah Del Rey.
Yes.
He talks about that, how she was the connection there. But yeah, I mean, he did a two-parter with William Regal, for example, that's phenomenal.
Right. Yeah,
and he, it takes him from how he got into the industry to now.
Right, and you do get to learn a lot about how the way things work with that podcast. And you get lots of, one of my favorite things about pro wrestling generally is all the crazy behind-the-scenes stories that these guys have been doing this for decades have. It's wonderful.
And on top of that, it's a really good podcast.
Yeah, it really is. I do think Colt has a tendency to talk over people, but
only people who let him.
It's true. There are other people who don't let him get a word in edgewise. So,
like New Jack.
Well, it's really hard with New Jack.
And I also recommend listening to MVPs because his is amazing. There are some real stellar ones, and there's some that are just kind of like, they're just two people shooting the shit. But,
like Eddie Edwards.
Yeah. I mean, also I've seen Eddie Edwards interviewed, so I know a lot about him.
However, the one standout match from WWE's Beast in the East has to be Finn Balor versus...
I really wish you wouldn't say it like that.
I'm doing it the way Neville said it.
Finn Balor.
Finn Balor versus Kevin Owens.
Ooh.
Oh, it was good.
Wow, they're bringing everybody up all of a sudden from NXT.
Yes, that was for the NXT Championship. Do you want to know who won?
Of course.
Spoilers ahead. You might, if you have not watched this event.
Did Prince Devitt win?
Yep. Prince Devitt is now the NXT champion.
Awesome. Well,
it was fantastic.
We knew that was going to happen.
Well, I was curious how they were going to do it, especially since they've made Kevin so unstoppable.
Fucking amazing.
As he should be.
Matthew posted on his Facebook page the picture of John Cena on the ground in front of Kevin Owens, and he was just like, what?
The Botchamania guy.
Yes,
Matthew, yeah.
It was so good. And I was like, that has to be Photoshopped. Like, that didn't actually happen. And then I went and looked. I was like, holy shit, it happened. This is amazing.
Moving on to the next least interesting.
TNA.
Nope.
ROH?
ROH best in the world.
Damn it.
This was not a bad event. I'm not saying it was a bad event.
But it's not their best.
I've had a problem with the ROH brand ever since they've really tried to be competition for the like, they're not direct competition.
Specifically to be TV competition.
But they want to be a bigger, more mainstream brand. Let's put it that way. They want to be a more mainstream brand, not necessarily competition for WWE. So they have dumbed down their product to a certain extent. No, you've seen some of it. I mean, the ROH from 5 to 8 years ago is much more extreme than what we have now. What we have now is not bad. I mean, It's just it's a little slower. It's a little tighter. It's not the ROH I prefer.
It's no Davey and Eddie Edwards wrestling for like a half an hour.
No, that was like 65 minutes. That was
Jesus
that was
Christ.
best in the world about 4 years ago. Can't believe it
Motherfucker.
was that long ago.
That's crazy.
But this card was solid. The main event here was really interesting. They've been setting this up for like 2 years, and it was Jay Lethal as the television champion, and he's been the champion for I don't know how long
ever since he left
and
TNA.
and he's been one of the main heels, right? Over in
he's so good at being a heel
in ROH, versus the ROH World Champion Jay Briscoe, who has not been pinned in 2 years. This was a title unification match.
Interesting.
For like the ultimate ROH champion. So, I mean, Jay Briscoe is like basically their Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's been their badass, their ass kicker, the whole for like years now.
Can you clarify? This is not one of the Briscoe brothers.
Yes, it is.
Is it? Okay.
Yes, it is.
I was going to ask if they're still tagging together.
They
or not.
tag on occasion, like they haven't separated them completely.
Okay.
But Mark and Jay are kind of doing their own separate things, and Mark has more of a comedic take on his wrestling now, and Jay is more like the hardcore brawler guy.
Is he the taller one?
He's the scarier looking one.
Yeah.
Mark's the guy with no
Yep.
teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, who does redneck kung fu, and all his things are named after
God.
chickens. Yeah, I'm a Briscoe fan. It's cool. So, who do you think won this match?
Jay Lethal.
Jay Lethal fucking won.
Awesome.
Jay Lethal is now the unified ROH champion.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Despite the fact that he has been a heel for God knows how long at this point. When he won, he got a "You deserve it" chant, which, for those of us who have followed Jay's career, like his rise in TNA.
Before that, though, his rise in the Indies.
His rise in ROH.
Yeah.
And then his rise and subsequent stalling in TNA, and then back to ROH. The fact that this kid, who is still really young, is now actually has
Grand
a
Slam
slot
champion.
in history. Because once you get something like this, no one else is ever that, right? Like, so once you're like a unified champion, that is a moment in the wrestling archives that no one else can really have.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it's Jay, I think, is great. I'm a Jay fan. I think he deserves it. And the fact that he hasn't even hit his peak yet is amazing.
I think he absolutely deserves it, just like he deserved that TNA world title.
Absolutely.
And never got it.
Absolutely.
It was completely ridiculous to me that they built his narrative like I'm just a kid from Elizabeth, New Jersey, and this is my dream, and then they just tanked it.
And then, yeah, exactly. They tanked it.
Thanks, Hogan.
I was about to say, they tanked it around the same time that Hogan came in, right? So,
man, when he was doing Flair to Flair, that was amazing.
It was great. It was great. Now, it's a comedic gimmick, which is only going to get you so far, but the fact that he did...
Flair let him put him in the
it was
figure
good.
4, and he tapped.
It was good.
I mean, that's not a small thing.
No, and the fact that that was a moment where you're like, well, maybe Flair isn't as bad as all we hear, you know?
Maybe he was senile that day. We don't know.
It's true. And there was, like, there were good matches here and there. I mean, Roderick Strong and Michael Elgin. I mean, how can that possibly be bad?
That's a match of, like, who can hit someone the hardest.
The hardest, and that's exactly
Between
what it was.
Between the two of them.
The Addiction, which is Daniels and Kazarian.
Oh, jeez.
So, you know, versus
They're still tagging together?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Versus Red Dragon, which is a team I really like.
Mm-hmm.
Red Dragon is Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly.
Oh, okay.
But the standout match for me was early in the card. Silas Young, who I don't think you've seen.
No, I haven't seen
Silas Young has... When you hear people say, oh, he's old school, he reminds me of Bruiser Brody, or whenever you hear all that, who they're really talking about would be Silas Young. Silas Young looks like he belongs in like a late 70s crime movie. He is that guy with the mustache who just beats your face in.
Awesome.
He doesn't have a face, he has a mug.
Okay.
And he sells his heelness to such an extent versus my favorite new wrestler, Dalton Castle.
I was going to say, is it Dalton Castle? I bet it is.
Mr. Banana Hands himself, Dalton Castle. So think about this. You had like the most butch, masculine dude ever.
Versus the most fey weirdo.
Versus Gorgeous George 3.0.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was exactly what you would think it is, but it was also an amazing technical match because,
of course, because they're both really good.
Silas is really good, and Dalton Castle is has a lot of amateur background, so they put together a stellar fucking match. This match was just a hair short of being a match of the year contender for me.
Cool,
more so than the main event.
Well, I mean, I'm just gonna put this out there, and you can roll your eyes at me if you want. I am. Wrestling, if comics are 10 years behind the times, wrestling's about 50 years behind the times in some ways.
It's usually 10 to 20 behind the times.
And we're still doing the gay, effeminate man gimmick a little bit.
But
it is a callback to Gorgeous George, so...
But can we please just say...
He does it really
Dalton
fucking
Castle
well.
is brilliant at this.
Yes, he is.
He is one of the best ring personas I've seen in a long time, especially
It's
for this style gimmick.
If you take Dolph Ziggler, Gorgeous George, John Morrison, and who's the kid?
Liberace,
and who's the kid from NXT who does all the selfies?
Oh, I totally forgot his name.
What's his name?
Because we actually really like him.
Mm-hmm.
That kid.
Yeah, that dude who's actually has potential. You put a little bit of Icarus in there too. Yeah. You put it in a blender, add some gold dust on top, and that's who this fucking dude
fabulous.
is.
And honestly, Dalton also has a real hipster vibe to him, which I don't mind.
He's like, I was Faye before it was cool.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't say Faye as an insult.
And he looks like a guy who's going to be drinking cold pressed coffee while talking about his latest, Web 2.0 startup.
He's drinking cold pressed coffee while tweeting while fucking somebody.
Yeah.
He's the dude who takes pictures of his own dick during sex.
Or during wrestling.
Yeah. The gimmick still makes me roll my eyes every time I see it, but it is well done.
I'll give Dalton's case, and the fact is that they're going to put him against Silas and have a real match.
Oh yeah, he's not a sissy, quote unquote.
No, he'll kick your ass.
He
That's
doesn't
what's great
run
about it.
you know. And once you get up into the big two, or rather, it's just the big one now because TNA has gone down in flames.
We're about to get to it.
You had Orlando Jordan basically being like, I'm bisexual, but he was like the creepy stalker who ran away from an actual fight. So that's the difference between those types of gimmicks.
Well, wrestling is always going to be based on exaggeration of trope. It's just the way the characters work.
I will never forget his Rob Terry pasties, though.
One of my favorite moments in wrestling.
That was brilliant. It was pure brilliance.
I cannot find a picture of that online.
God damn it.
Because I've wanted to post it many times, but I can't.
I would make it my Facebook profile photo. It's so good. We may need to find a recording of that and cap it.
So moving on, so the number 2, the runner-up to most interesting, was actually TNA Slammeversary.
Really?
Yes. Not necessarily because of the card itself, but because of the fallout of the card. This was actually a pretty good event for TNA over the last couple years. Okay. This is actually one of their better ones. There was only 1 or 2 matches where you're like, that wasn't so good. Most of it was completely solid.
Okay.
Even though some people really phoned it in. Okay, let's get to it. The main event was a King of the Mountain match. Now, King of the Mountain has not been done
in a long time.
But do you know why they did it again?
Why?
Guess who came back for that match?
Who?
Jeff Jarrett.
Oh, okay.
So Jeff Jarrett came back to participate in the match he invented in TNA.
Yeah, well, I don't particularly care because I've seen Jeff forever and a day now.
Well, and that Jeff, for instance, has been making this new promotion, Global Force Wrestling, and one of the things he's been doing that's interesting is he's going to other promotions and he's making a lot of contacts. So Global Force was very present, for instance, in the most recent AAA, what they call it, the World Cup, which is so they had all these other promotions involved. It was basically Chikara's King of Trios on a bigger stage. It just wasn't as entertaining. But I'm assuming that from what I'm seeing is that Global Force is going to be kind of an international kind of thing.
Great.
So
he's going to,
great. And it's going to be multi.
He has a lot of contacts in Japan from
multi-promotional, which I think is great. If we can get a weekly multi-promotional show,
that would be fucking
great. That would be
great.
outstanding.
Holy shit. He's smart and he's good at the promotion and back end of wrestling, obviously. So he's not a bad wrestler.
One of the
even if he does wear, MC Escher bondage.
Well, he did once. So
that we know of. It could have happened again.
A major TNA star, former ROH star, has actually left immediately after this. Joe's gone already.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Austin Aries did not renew his contract.
I'm not shocked.
There's also rumors, for instance, that Awesome Kong is gone. I can't confirm it.
She was back?
Yeah.
I thought she wasn't going to wrestle again after she had her kid.
No, she's back, and she's slimmed down. Not a lot.
Okay.
But she's much more mobile in the ring. It works for her.
Okay. No, as long as they didn't make her, like, be skinny, you know?
I've also heard some rumors that Davey Richards might also be leaving.
I'm not shocked by that.
Basically, I can't confirm those two. I know Austin is gone.
He's been there for a while.
And basically what Slammiversary was the death rattle of TNA.
Exactly.
TNA is probably done.
Good.
And if you've been following the news, you know, for instance, that there's been this thing happening called the Wednesday Night Skirmish, alluding to the Monday Night War, where ROH and TNA are appearing on the same network. This is something that has never happened before.
Well,
and there's a lot of legal battling going on.
I thought ROH took over their slot.
Since we don't watch it on the actual stations, we get it through other means.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think they're on the same night.
Ooh, that's... okay.
But here's a problem.
Destination America, whatever the fuck that channel is.
Both, when it happened, both shows lost viewership.
Really?
So,
okay.
This story is interesting. Now, the thing of it is that Destination America has said, at this point, they have no plans of canceling TNA.
Great. So it just gets to continue to die a slow, horrible death.
Not only that, but they have several months' worth of television taped that they're airing.
Jesus Christ.
Through summer. So TNA's not going to go away anytime soon, but as far as I know, there's no new events.
Okay.
So all you're seeing on Destination America is going to be old footage that they've taped over the last couple months.
Ugh.
And then once we get, I think, to fall, we'll see if they do new product or not.
Okay.
Where this has real resonance is in the fact that the winner of the King of the Mountain match for the King of the Mountain Championship was Jeff Jarrett.
Ha! He's taking it with him.
And the idea, I guess, the speculation is that
that title into his promotion?
That title is going to be the Global Force Championship.
Good. Well, he made it. He might have rights to it, actually.
Exactly. So that will give legitimacy to their actual world title if that's what they're going to do. Makes perfect sense to me. I don't really have a problem with any of that.
I don't care.
Yeah.
TNA and I broke up a long time ago.
Just as a side note, TNA is a punching bag and has been a punching bag for the wrestling community for a long time.
It was damn good when it was good, though.
From about 2005 to about 2010,
it was fucking awesome.
It was better than every other wrestling promotion out there.
And a lot of people thought, honestly, it had a good shot.
It really did.
At jockeying with WWE.
It really did. They were very, very close.
But then Hogan happened.
Hogan and Bischoff were brought in, and Hogan and Bischoff are like leprosy.
Yep.
And what
especially together.
What I mean by that is by the time body parts start falling off,
it's too late.
It's too late to do anything about it.
Too fucking late.
So once Bischoff and Hogan have left, they tried bringing back the six-sided ring. They tried bringing back older stars, but there was just no way they could make up for what had happened.
Didn't AJ leave shortly after that?
Yeah. AJ's been gone for a couple times. But AJ has been
He's in Noah, right?
No, he's in New Japan.
He's in New Japan.
He is the IWGP heavyweight champion.
Yeah. He's part of... Is he in Bullet Club? He's not in Bullet Club.
He is in the Bullet Club.
Okay. Yeah, but he's part of the Gaijin invasion.
Yes, the Western invasion of New Japan.
With the Young Bucks and a couple of
Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Bad Luck Fal. Scott Hall's son is now a part of it.
Scott Hall bred?
Yeah.
A woman let that happen?
Yeah, I guess so.
Dear Lord.
He's bigger than his father. He's like huge.
Scott Hall's huge.
Yeah, this kid is massive.
Tell me that they're not doing like a Razor Ramon.
No, they're not. They're just It's New Japan. They don't do things quite the same way.
But they do have weird gimmicks like
that.
They
definitely do.
So, yeah.
So that was Slammiversary. A lot of weird implications for the industry.
Slammiversary, yeah. How interesting.
So the next event is New Japan Dominion. For your average wrestling fan, they want to like Japanese wrestling, and they often say they do. I like Puroresu. It's so rare to get it on television here. And Axis Television, AXS, has been showing a New Japan television show, which is basically a recap of older matches for a while. And they've been doing these iPay-per-views, and it's been easier to get New Japan's product specifically in this country. So far this year, for candidates for pay-per-view of the year was Wrestle Kingdom 9. Wrestle Kingdom 9 by New Japan was probably the best pay-per-view of the year so far. until this one.
Okay.
Dominion was outstanding.
What about it was good?
Everything. There was not one bad match. Not one.
Damn, that's pretty impressive.
And there were 10 matches. Every one of these was phenomenally good, and they were all kind of different.
Anybody I know?
Everybody. Now, I'm not going to go match by match, but the thing of it is, every New Japan pay-per-view, every event always has a 10-man veteran tag where they trot out all the older guys so you can see them again. And I don't want to be derogatory towards it, but it's like, oh, you get to see Liger for 10 minutes, right?
Yep.
And like in this one, it was Nakanishi, Masuko Dorada, Taguchi, Sho Tanaka, who's one of the Young Lions, and Yuji Nagata versus Tenzan, Liger, Kojima, and Tiger Mask.
Holy shit.
And this is a common kind of match that they have in New Japan.
That's quite a lineup,
They
though.
tend to be a little sloppy and slow. This one was really good.
Well, all those guys are still in good shape.
Like, they actually put on an amazing show here. You know what? Maybe I will just go match per match really quickly, just so we can get the full impact of what this pay-per-view really was. That was a great match. I'm always happy when I get to see people like Tenzan and Liger.
I'll watch Tenzan all damn day.
Yeah. The next match, the Young Bucks, who are a part of
fucking great.
The Bullet Club.
I'm Mr. Backyard Wrestling.
Versus Red Dragon versus Roppongi Vice. And
you told me about Roppongi Vice.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about the gimmick because sometimes I think it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
It's pretty ridiculous.
Well, for a while I didn't understand it. Like, what the fuck? Why are they calling themselves this? And then you look at them and they're like, oh, they're like Crockett and Tubbs from Miami Vice.
Yes.
I'm so stupid.
This is what I'm talking about in Japanese wrestling. They do funky shit like this.
Yeah, but you know what? This gimmick, I believe, was fully Rocky Romero's idea.
Oh, yeah.
So, there you go. Red Dragon, I gotta say, like, we always talk about the Young Bucks being probably the best tag team working. However, I have to say, the problem with them is, no matter what is going on, face or heel, comedy match or serious, the Young Bucks always wrestle the same match.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's always the same thing. That is to their detriment, I think. Red Dragon is really the best tag team in the world right now, in my opinion. They're the most versatile. They're the most believable. They can wrestle both humorous and very serious. I think Kyle O'Reilly has really broken away from being this Davey Richards clone. He's added a lot of humor and personality to his matches. Unfortunately, I don't think in the grand scheme of things, he's never going to be like a singles world champion in like WWE. However, I'd be surprised if Bobby Fish isn't. Bobby Fish is an amazing talent, and I see no reason why he can't go all the way. So that's just my opinion on those guys. Then we had Tetsuya Naito, the Stardust Genius, who and Honma, who I love. The thing about Naito is one of the best physical performers you're ever going to see. He always looks like he's afraid he's about to shit his pants. And for some reason, that kills him for me. Like, I can't, like, he's got the worst tights, the worst nickname, the worst hair, the worst look, and he does a stupid thing with his eye. It just drives me crazy. Now, the fact is, like I said, Naito is physically one of the best performers in New Japan. He was derailed from being the champion by some injuries. Now he's kind of doing a heel thing where he seems really uninterested in the match he's in. I think it works. I love it. Honma brings me nothing but joy. Honma is okay. The thing about Honma, he has one move he does, and it's the funniest fucking thing. He'll go off the ropes, tilt his head a little at an angle, and then fall on a guy with his head. And it is the funniest looking thing.
Does he have his arms out, or is he?
No, they're by his side.
Is he like arrowing it? Yeah,
they're completely by his side.
Awesome.
And the great thing about it is that most of the time he misses.
So he just face plants in the ring
every time, and there's a pop from the audience every time.
That's hilarious.
Now I've seen him try to do 10 in a row on 10 different people
and
miss all of them.
God.
And then I've seen matches where he does it 10 times in a row and hits all of them.
He's gonna break his nose.
And because he's got this huge melon,
yeah.
It just I mark out for Honma so badly. And they wrestled against Bullet Club, Bad Luck Fail, and Takahashi, who I think is completely pointless at this point. Next, we had a really interesting match that should have gone on much longer, but one of the newer guys, Shibata, versus MMA legend Sakuruba. And they had a complete MMA shoot style kind of match that could have been considered the match of the pay-per-view if we had about 5 to 10 minutes more.
Okay.
But Sakuraba is somebody who, despite his legendary status over the past year or so, he hasn't had matches that I think he deserves.
Mm-hmm.
This one was. This was a really great match. Then we had the match of the fucking pay-per-view for me. Kenny Omega, who's a part of the Bullet Club, Canadian wrestler. He kind of has a sleazebag persona that seems a little Brian Pillman-y, versus Kushida. Kushida was part of the Time Splitters with Alex Shelley, and he's now kind of breaking out on his own, doing his own thing. This was a 5-star match in every way. Loved every minute of it. I watched it twice.
Nice.
Then we had Makabe versus Tomohiro Ishii. This was two big bruisers just beating the living crap out of each other. This was classic Japanese strong style. I'm going to clothesline you until you see stars.
Nice.
And it was good. It was great.
Nice.
We then had another Bullet Club match, Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson.
Oh, cool. Oh, nice.
With Doc's wife. Amber Gallows.
Doc Gallows as in Luke Gallows, correct?
And Festus.
Yeah.
Versus the Kingdom, which is Matt Taven and Michael Bennett with Maria Kanellis. Solid match. I have been very lukewarm to the Kingdom, despite how much internet love they seem to get, because I really don't like Michael Bennett. But this match sold it for me. I am now a complete fan. They worked incredibly well in this match.
Nice.
Then we had Hiroshi Tanahashi, who is the New Japan version of John Cena. He is marketed basically the same way to a youthful audience, and he's kind of got like the Japanese.
Yeah, I've seen him.
He's got the mullet, and he plays rock guitar.
I know who he is.
Versus Toru Yano. Now, Toru Yano, his gimmick is that he's a little nutty. Okay? Toru Yano is crazy. Like, that's the gimmick, is you don't know what this guy is going to do, and he seems like he's a little dim-witted. And he just does incredibly hilarious things in the ring. One of my favorite things he does is, like, whenever somebody just grabs a hold of him, he puts something like an arm or his head or his leg through the rope and just screams in bad English, "Break!" So, and it's been popping really well. So, as soon as the match started, before they locked up, he didn't even lock up fully. He just went to the rope, stuck his head out, and just went, break, break, break! Ooh! And he did it for like 10 minutes. Like, he wouldn't let the match start. It was amazing. Oh, rewind. I have to say something about the Young Bucks match. Sorry, I forgot about this. The first movement, Matt Jackson, I believe it was, kicks somebody in Red Dragon right in the stomach. Like, this is the first move of the match. Just kicks him, puts his arms up, and just says, "I'm on fire, baby, and I'm a psychopath."
Oh my God.
And walks away.
See, this is what I love about the Young Bucks.
They totally take the piss.
So you know how in Japan they have sponsors and they go out with them and go drinking with them and
Yes,
do all this
yes.
stuff? All their sponsors want them to super kick them.
Like, the whole sponsor thing in Japanese wrestling
and
is
all the
strange.
handlers are like, "No, you really don't." And they're like, "No, I want it. And like,
Super kiku!
So they just super kick all these guys. It's amazing. They actually super kicked. I think they super kicked one dude twice, and they have photos of it.
That's
I think
amazing.
they tweeted them. You should go look. It's pretty
I will.
awesome.
So yeah, that was Tanahashi and Yano, and then we had Hiroki Goto versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Now,
Ooh.
Yes, Goto is somebody who's kind of been mid-cardy, much better than the position he's in. So this was a chance to really elevate this guy.
Nice.
And Nakamura, if you're not aware, is the #1 most over, most popular wrestler in Japan. Maybe per capita in the world. It's hard to say because of how pervasive the WWE brand is, but Nakamura is magic. This guy is fucking
phenomenal.
Is fucking magic in the ring. That's all I can say. Just go to YouTube or get this event, watch it.
Him.
I can't even do him justice. But this was a good match. This actually was probably the weakest match of the card, but I mean, think about that.
Yeah, that's a pretty stellar card.
Then we come to the main event, which is Okada versus AJ Styles for the heavyweight IWGP Championship.
Nice.
Okay, Okada is somebody technically I shouldn't like. And what I mean by that is Okada doesn't do high flying.
Yeah.
Okada doesn't do martial arts. Okada doesn't do a lot of like MMA style shoot wrestling.
Yeah, but
he's just a wrestler.
He's gonna kill you.
He's just a wrestler. Okada's just a wrestler. However, what Okada has is impeccable ring timing. And his ring psychology is probably the best. He's probably even better than Tanahashi in that regard, in my opinion. Okada is going to be a legend, barring injuries or whatever. He is that fucking good.
Cool.
And yeah, he wrestled AJ Styles, who I don't think I have to put over here because AJ is fucking AJ.
AJ's done a bang-up job of putting himself over through the
AJ
years.
is the Sting of his generation, which basically means he is a legend.
Woo!
No, he is a legend,
I know.
and he has made his name, and he should be remembered. And
He'll be in the Hall
as
of
a
Fame.
top-tier talent without ever having to step foot in the WWE.
You think he'll be in the Hall of Fame?
The WWE's Hall of Fame? Yeah, I mean, eventually.
That's a legitimate question. Do they put wrestlers in the Hall of Fame that have not wrestled in that company?
Yes, but we're talking about lots of old school guys.
That's what I'm saying.
So
Yeah.
it might be a very long time before AJ Styles, unless he gets into the WWE. You know,
He's getting older.
He is getting older, but he's still. I mean, what he loses in, say, mobility and flippiness, for instance, he's making up for in ring psychology.
Cool.
The guy is.
He's really good.
He's amazing. This match, 5 stars. I still think the
5 stars.
5 star. 5 stars. I still think the Kushida match was better. But this was everything I wanted it to be. It was a 26-minute match. It was perfection.
Cool.
So, and do you want to know who won that?
AJ.
No, Okada's once again the IWGP Championship.
Okay.
So congratulations to the Rainmaker for that one.
Awesome.
And that was it for the 4 events we had over the past week and a half, 2 weeks.
Nice.
So it was a good week. I mean, I didn't watch any of the weekly shows because I couldn't because all this was going on.
Oh, you missed Superstars?
Yeah, I missed all the shows. But hey, I'm
sad.
upset. I didn't get to see NXT or Lucha this week. So
Oh man, Lucha Underground's insane.
best show. Oh,
So good.
either every week it's either the first or the second best show. I mean,
Awesome.
NXT is sometimes the best show. But...
Yeah, but I like the soap opera pieces of Lucha Underground.
Oh, the telenovela, aspects
style
they have
shit that
to
they
their.
do. It's fucking great. It's so good.
Yeah, there are rumors the show isn't going to last, but I have every episode downloaded, and it is
awesome.
Amazing. I think that is mostly it for me. Do you have anything you want to share?
No, nothing in particular. I think we're going to, over the next couple weeks and moving forward, we're going to start posting some actual content on the Twitter account and kind of linking to certain things that we find along the way. So stay tuned. And,
Well, there is definitely going to be a link that coincides with this one.
Yeah.
So having to do with the transgender conversation we were having earlier, there's going to be some links put up with that. So I would advise that you read them if you're interested in this topic.
If you'd like to see more kind of background and resources from us, we're more than happy to put some stuff up so you can do some reading and take a look at other people's perspectives.
I'm probably going to put the Hollywood Lawn
do it.
Thing up so people can donate to that.
I think it's important, especially considering that we're both cisgender, to amplify trans voices too. So we're not the authority.
Also,
by any means.
to be, with the name and the way we approach things, it's not always about negativity, even though that's what comes out a lot. It's like we're negative because we want positivity. I mean, that's the best way to put it.
We're not negative. We're critical.
We're not cynical. We're disappointed optimists.
Yeah.
Right. So
I am not a cynic. A cynic does not yell at people the way I did earlier in the podcast.
Well, except for that Warner Brothers thing.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's pure unbridled frustration.
I'm frustrated with Warner too.
A cynic would just walk away.
A book you should read, and I'll point this.
I don't read books.
You don't read nonfiction books too much, but one you should read is Fools Rush In, I think it's called. It's about the Time Warner AOL debacle. It'll tell you a lot about the way Warner Brothers works. So.
Oh man, that was bad.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Bischoff has said that is probably the main reason why WCW fell apart. I mean, that's what he says. People are going to argue him.
Yep.
But that book paints a picture. So, you think you're done?
Yeah. I just want to say, don't ever read books they let the devil in.
Before we leave, I just want to say, right after we're done, stay tuned. I'm going to play a little music. I said I was going to play some of Bryan Konietzko's band, Ginormous. I really like what he's doing with it. So, there's that. Other than that, I'm Leslie Nielsen.
And I'm Elvira.
Thank you for listening.